Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Season 6 US Cyber Open Kickoff Celebration. We are so happy to have you guys here. My name is Jessica Gulick, founder and commissioner of the US Cyber Games, and it is my privilege to welcome our competitors, coaches, educators, sponsors, industry leaders, government partners, volunteers, and cyber enthusiasts joining us from across the United States and around the world. Whether you are a seasoned competitor, a student taking your first steps into cybersecurity, a teacher inspiring future talent, or a professional looking to sharpen your skills, we are excited that you are here with us today and hopefully for the next week or so. Before we begin, I would like to recognize and thank our season sponsors and partners. Their support helps make the US Cyber Open and the US Cyber Games possible and provides opportunities for thousands of current and aspiring cyber professionals to learn, compete, and grow. A special thank you to NIST, CISA, MasterCard, Battelle, SimSpace, SANS Institute, Glitch, US Cyber Range, the Women's Society of Cyber Jitsu, and the Cyber Esports Foundation for their commitment to developing the next generation of cyber talent. We really appreciate your leadership, partnership, and investment in our cyber athletes and the future of workforce. Today, cybersecurity is more important than ever. Our nation depends on secure digital infrastructure, trusted AI systems, and a highly skilled workforce capable of defending them. Across government, industry, academia, there is a growing recognition that America's competitive advantage depends not only on technology, but on the people. Individuals who can think critically, solve complex problems, adapt under pressure, and innovate in rapidly changing environments. This is where our program, the US Cyber Games, plays an important role. We believe great cyber professionals are developed through a combination of education, experience, and deliberate practice. Classrooms, certifications, and training programs provide the technical foundations, but competitions provide something equally important. They develop the cognitive skills required to perform when the stakes are high. In capture the flag competitions, participants learn to navigate uncertainty, recognize patterns, make decisions with incomplete information, and collaborate with teammates in real time. Over time, these experiences build intuition and instinct, the ability to identify opportunities, assess risks, and act decisively when the answer is not immediately obvious. Much like pilots use simulators and athletes use practice, and elite esports competitors train reaction time and decision-making, our cyber athletes compete to condition their minds for high-performance problem-solving. They learn how to think through the fog of pressure, remain focused when the situation is unclear, and execute when every second counts. In many ways, we are witnessing the evolution of traditional cyber competitions into what we call cyber sports. Just as esports transform video games into a platform of developing teamwork, strategy, and elite performance, cyber sports transform cyber competitions into a training ground for the next generation of cyber defenders. The goal is not simply solving technical challenges. It's developing cognitive agility, strategic thinking, communication, leadership, and the ability to perform as part of a high-functioning team. Cyber sports are powerful and complement education. Together, we develop cyber athletes, professionals whose technical expertise is matched by sound judgment, teamwork, and the ability to operate. And as artificial intelligence becomes increasingly integrated into our lives and work, the unique human capabilities become even more valuable. Technical knowledge alone is no longer enough. We need the ability to combine the technical capability with cognitive skills. Today, we have for you a wonderful opportunity to hear from some amazing speakers. And we are very excited for the lineup, not just for today, but for the rest of this week. And there is perhaps no better way to begin today's event than with a leader whose organization sits at the center of America's cybersecurity standards and technology innovation efforts. It's my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Jim St. Pierre. Jim serves as the Deputy Director of Information Technology Laboratory, or ITL, at the National Institute of Standards and Technologies, better known as NIST. ITL is one of NIST's largest research laboratories, advancing critical work in cybersecurity, AI, quantum information science, interoperability, reliability, and measurement science. As Deputy Director, Jim helps oversee research dedicated to building trust in IT through standards, measurements, testing, and guidance that both support the government and industry. The work of NIST influences cybersecurity practices not only across the federal government, but throughout the global technology ecosystem. Before joining NIST, Jim worked as a technical project leader within Loral Space Systems Semiconductor Design Group and at IBM supporting hardware and software development for Los Angeles-class submarines. Throughout his distinguished career, he has published technical research, delivered hundreds of presentations to national and international audiences, and helps advance science and standards that enable secure, reliable, and trustworthy information systems. As artificial intelligence, quantum technologies, and increasingly complex digital systems continue to transform the world, Jim's perspective on innovation, cybersecurity, and the future of technology is particularly timely. Please join me in welcoming Deputy Director Jim St. Pierre of NIST. Jim, thank you for joining us today and for your continued leadership in advancing cybersecurity and technology innovation. We really appreciate having you here today.
Great. Thank you so much, Jess. I'm really glad to be here. Good afternoon, everyone. It's so wonderful to be with you today for the launch of the 6th season of the U.S. Cyber Games. On behalf of NIST and through NICE, the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, that's the program here at NIST that's focused on advancing cybersecurity education and workforce. We are very proud to be a founding partner of this phenomenal program and stand alongside Cat's Eye, CISA, and the industry and academic sponsors in recruiting and training an elite U.S. cyber team. I'd like to acknowledge the U.S. cyber team's accomplishments and hard work they've put in to prepare for and compete in several prestigious global cybersecurity competitions. Of particular note, last year, our U.S. cyber team placed third overall in the international cybersecurity competition. This year, they placed second overall. So I can't wait to cheer on the team next year and aim to bring home the gold. As a Deputy Director of the Information Technology Lab at NIST, I know firsthand the critical importance of a highly skilled, deeply knowledgeable cyber workforce. We don't just need this talent for what we do here at NIST. We're always looking for that talent and trying to bring more talent and individuals like yourselves on board. But employers across the federal government in small and medium-sized businesses, as well as large and multinational organizations, and across industries and critical infrastructure sectors are looking for your generation to protect the system services and devices that keep our modern world spinning, from our cars to our GPS to the water we drink. And virtually any product we use, cybersecurity is critical to protecting it and thereby protecting all of us. At NIST, we are committed to advancing American innovation and industrial competitiveness to be able to meet these needs. And when we look at the world of cyber competitions today, it's easy to forget the physical foundations that make all this possible. Technology evolves at a breakneck pace, but it always roots itself in hardware. Early in my career, I had the privilege of working in the semiconductor industry and on submarines, as you just heard. In federal systems, I worked in several IBM federal systems. I worked on several different areas, developing and integrating semiconductor design tools to developing submarine sonar signal processing hardware and software. In the development of the semiconductor design tools, back then, we didn't even worry about whether the design files might be compromised or the tools. But today, that's a significant area of concern. That's just one example of the evolution and continuing evolution of cybersecurity in the technology space. As new technologies emerge, that increases the attack surface. That will continue. That is not going to stop. An interesting experience going back to my sonar system development days. We had code reviews. I was developing both hardware and software, which I recommend if you're doing one, you try to do some of the other over your career. And we would actually sit down for the software review that included 4 to 5 engineers and programmers sitting down and reading that signal processing software and control software line by line. Now, today is much different, right? We're at the point now where I'm sure a lot of you use AI to develop software, and testing that software is an ongoing challenge, making sure there's not vulnerabilities introduced. And, what extent can we use AI to help patch vulnerabilities, find and patch vulnerabilities? By choosing to work in cybersecurity, you have chosen a field that will continue to evolve. And I don't know if all of you have decided that, but maybe this competition will help you decide if you want to do that. This is literally an arms race, and you are on the front lines. The bad actors will continue to look for new ways to get into our systems, and we will continue to try to stay one step ahead of them. And we're counting on you to do that. To do that, you'll have certain characteristics I think are important. Flexibility. You need to be able, I think Jess touched on this, to be able to move quickly past any mistakes, or if you realize you're going in a dead end, toward a dead end, realize that quickly. Don't beat yourself up about it. Just move in the new direction. If where you're currently heading or the things you're trying aren't getting you where you need to be. And also, career-wise, I always recommend to everyone to be flexible in taking advantage of opportunities that arise that might seem like a diversion from the path you're on. You might be very surprised and pleased where a diversion might lead you. I was what we call a bench scientist here at NIST. That's someone who's doing research or standards development. When I was asked to take a temporary assignment in the NIST director's office as part of the NIST director's staff, technical staff, for 1 year. This eventually led me into management. I enjoyed working at that level so much. And I found that while I love engineering, being a manager, I'm still involved in technology, but just at a higher level. And leading human beings is as complicated as any engineering problem. There are many, many variables. But I found it's incredibly rewarding to help your team overcome obstacles. So let me just be clear. We still need a lot of technical experts. That is not going to change in the near term. And another characteristics I would point out is to stay curious. As I'm sure you know, staying curious is critical to the success in the cyber games. You need to be curious about why the system is reacting the way it is. Why are you seeing what you're seeing? What can be causing that? To quote Isaac Asimov, the most exciting phrase to hear in science, the one that heralds new discoveries, is not eureka, but that's funny. Be curious about other subjects too. I'll paraphrase Kurt Vonnegut. I encourage you to try some type of art, whether it be poetry or pottery or drawing or playing an instrument. Don't worry about being any good at it. Just do it. Write a poem, even a lousy poem. Don't show it to anyone. It will expand your thinking. I think that's just helpful in helping you think about problems, and cybersecurity can be very thorny problems. Having these other perspectives helps you think differently and think about problems and work towards solutions. Having worked in hardware design in the past, I'm really excited that the games are evolving to include hardware challenges. And like I said, you might consider yourself a hardware person or a software person, but stay curious about all aspects because they intermingle and touch each other quite a bit. And related to that, I recently saw a wonderful demonstration of some of the work that's going on here at NIST in cybersecurity for operational technology, from securing manufacturing robots to securing water processing plants and chemical manufacturing and more. And that showed the importance of the computing systems that are controlling our critical infrastructure and our manufacturing and other services, and the importance of protecting that critical infrastructure. And of course, that infrastructure, when it gets down to the building blocks, semiconductors are essential building blocks of the tech we use today. Years ago, working in tech meant designing a chip by laying it out by transistor. That even by the time I was getting to semiconductor design, chip design, semiconductor design now is primarily a software task, as I'm sure some or all of you know, using high-level hardware description languages and logic synthesis tools to get to the target technology where you're going to fabricate for the fab site where you're going to build the chip. And the information technology landscape has shifted, and jobs have changed too. They continue to change. As one of the six research laboratories at NIST, ITL's mission is to cultivate trust in information technology and metrology, and to serve as a trusted source of rigorous, independent, and unbiased research and data. In ITL, we have been working on everything from computer security, biometrics that are reused in security, AI, applied cybersecurity, quantum, privacy, mathematics, and statistical engineering, and more. The breadth of this field, and we always like to say we have a wealth of problems to solve, and very interesting problems that are exciting to work on. And our work and our research supports the digital world we live in with interconnected software ecosystems, cloud networks, and now complex AI models. And we need cybersecurity professionals who can defend these virtualized environments. To understand the full picture requires an understanding of the entire stack, from the microchips at the bottom running our devices to the advanced AI algorithms on top. And this brings me to why the NIST mission is more vital today than ever before. The United States is in a battle for global leadership in critical and emerging technologies, or as the acronym is CETs, that will drive decades of national and economic security and prosperity. NIST's strategy for American technology leadership in the 21st century heavily focused on accelerating innovation and leadership in CETs, primarily in artificial intelligence, quantum technologies, biotechnology, and semiconductors. By accelerating advancement and innovation in CETs, we can ensure U.S. leadership in industries of the future. But to secure cutting-edge technology, we need equally cutting-edge workforce. World-class infrastructure means nothing without world-class human talent, and specifically world-class cybersecurity talent like you. This is exactly where the NICE program comes in. To meet the challenges of tomorrow, the draft NICE strategic plan for 2026 through 30 complements the broader NIST strategy, focusing on building, developing, and growing a sustainable and effective cyber workforce for our nation. NICE explores the ongoing evolution and workforce development and the sustained efforts of connecting foundational practices with innovative approaches designed to address emerging technologies and future challenges. And a corner of NICE's work is the NICE Workforce Framework for Cybersecurity, or simply the NICE framework. And that provides a common language that defines work roles, acts across organizations from governance to development, as well as those who investigate cyber crimes. The NICE framework is continuously evolving to address the unique impacts that various CETs introduce to cyber work. Take artificial intelligence as a prime example of a CET. The NICE framework is evolving in lockstep to reflect how AI affects our digital work. For example, we recently announced the new Artificial Intelligence Security Competency Area, which outlines the foundational skills and knowledge required to navigate the intersection of AI and cybersecurity. AI promises to be an effective tool to support and improve cyber defense. We are working to update the NICE framework rules to address the strategic and workforce implications of AI, the security of AI, and the security through AI. NICE also engages with others at NIST to explore development of AI-specific work roles, such as agentic AI management, inclusion in the framework to help build career pathways into these areas of work. So what does this all mean for you, participants in the U.S. Cyber Games? It means that the skills you are honing here are exactly what your country needs from you. As part of the cooperative agreement with NIST, that NIST has with Cat's Eye and the U.S. Cyber Games, continues to be designed to apply the NICE framework. The training, preparation, and experiences you are diving into over the next week are aligned with the NICE framework. By participating, you're not just playing games, you're engaging in a skills-based learning experience that is directly preparing you for a vital career. We need your talent, we need your focus, and we need your passion. The United States' economic prosperity, national security, and global leadership in cybersecurity and AI depend heavily on building a workforce composed of people exactly like you. The skills you'll be learning and demonstrating in the U.S. Cyber CTF competition don't stop at the end of the week. As we officially kick off this season, I want to cheer you on and encourage you to continue to explore and practice those skills. Stay curious, stay flexible, stay energized. To the coaches, sponsors, families, and fans, thank you for supporting the team and giving these athletes, yes, athletes, I'd say, a powerful foundation of support. I'd like to close by paraphrasing some remarks given by President Teddy Roosevelt. Part of that speech, I think, is directly relevant to this year's theme of Get in the game. We need you all in the game. This subset is famously known to, and maybe some of you have heard it, it's known as the man in the arena. And I think you'll see the relevance to the theme here. So I'll paraphrase President Roosevelt's remarks. Those remarks essentially said, "It is not the critic who counts, not the person who points out how the strong individual stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the person who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms and great devotions, who spends themselves in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if they fail, at least fails while daring greatly, so that their place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat." With that, I wish you all good luck in the arena. Thank you.
Unmute.
Brad, you're on mute.
There we go. We'll get that one out of the way right at the beginning. Jim, phenomenal comments. Thank you so much for kicking us off in such a strong way. When you talked about some of the different types of backgrounds and encouraging all of our participants and the audience to explore pottery and art and music and everything else, it certainly goes hand in hand with a lot of what we stand for here at the US Cyber Games program, and what we know is absolutely critical in terms of building the workforce moving forward. And of course, we love the comments about all of the hardware stuff. That's something that we hang our hat on here at the US Cyber Games program. We tend to do pretty well in that category of the challenge. And I think going back to something you mentioned in our second place finish at the ICC just a couple of weeks ago, we got the only hardware solve across the whole competition. So that was really exciting. I see a couple of folks commenting in chat about some of their hardware experiences and chips that they've messed around with and things like that. So really looking forward to getting to know them over the next couple of weeks in this program. So thank you for kicking us off that way. Really appreciate your support of the program, our mission and vision, and thank you to the entire NIST team for being with us since day one. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for all you're doing. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Good luck, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. All righty, folks. So with that, we get to go ahead and move on with our show. For those of you that I don't know that have not met me yet, my name is Brad Wolfenden. I'm the Director of Cyber Sports here at PlayCyber, and I will be your MC for the event today. And really looking forward to all of the guest speakers that we've invited to steal the mic for a few minutes and share some of their experiences with you. But for my part, I'm going to take a couple of minutes and sort of walk you through the Season 6 US Cyber Games program. So we'll talk a little bit about what you can expect, what we have planned, how to kind of position yourself if you are interested in pursuing a spot on the Season 6 US Cyber team, and a couple of other little tidbits that I know you will find helpful as we start to open up our CTFs over the coming couple of days. So as was referenced by our opening keynote, Mr. St. Pierre, the US Cyber Games program was founded by PlayCyber in cooperation with the NIST program office through a collaborative agreement. We are in our 6th year of programming, and our whole shtick here at the US Cyber Games program is to bring together talented cybersecurity athletes, coaches, and industry leaders to build a program that redefines cybersecurity workforce development by placing competitions and games at its core. And how we do that is really through kind of our approach to fusing cybersecurity competitions with traditional athletics and esports. And so you've heard from Jim talking about the individuals in our program. We refer to you all as athletes. We do have the privilege of representing the United States on the global stage at many international competitions. And This approach really encourages a bit of a shift in the paradigm. We know that there are many pathways into the world of cybersecurity, and we hope by carving out our own little niche, making this fun, making this exciting, engaging with new and different populations through live stream broadcasts, through professional networks, through student organizations and clubs, that we can really kind of open the scope in terms of the pipeline and bringing folks with many different types of backgrounds, many different talents into the program, and ultimately to consider a career in the field of cyber. So a little bit about cybersecurity competitions. I know many of you have reached out since joining Discord. We get lots of comments through our contact form on the website about what to expect from a competition perspective in this Season 6 US Cyber Open series of events. There are 2 competitions that we will be opening up over the coming days, and both of those are going to be Jeopardy-style capture the flag competitions. But what you should know is that competitions come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. They can be virtual, they can be in person, some are individual or team-based, and they can be designed to really engage competitors at any level of proficiency. So whether it's the first challenge you've ever opened or the 10,000th challenge you've solved, there's competitions that scale across the board in terms of technical expertise that's required in order to be successful. Jeopardy-style capture the flags are just like the traditional TV show that maybe some of you have seen. I'm kind of dating myself a little bit potentially, although I still feel quite young. I know that's not the case, less and less so every day. But at one time there was a show on TV called Jeopardy, and there were categories across the top of a game board. Things like geography or history or pop culture or whatever. And so the cybersecurity world has kind of taken that approach and turned it into a cyber competition with categories running from cryptography to reverse engineering to web to open source intelligence gathering to networking and recon, hardware, and nowadays things like AI, ML, cloud, that kind of stuff has come into the scene as well. Within each of those categories, there are challenges to be solved. Some of those challenges may take you a couple of minutes, some of them may take you several hours or days. But certainly the ultimate goal in solving these challenges is to find the flag. You'll submit the flag and then you will receive some points within the leaderboard and within the competition environment. Things like attack and defense competitions are also big here at the US Cyber Games program. Our large international competitions feature Jeopardy-style CTFs and attack and defense competitions. But King of the Hill competitions exist, social engineering competitions exist, policy and strategy competitions exist. And the reason I like to bring this up is because there are competitions for everybody. If you really like some of the business side of things and maybe law and policy, those kinds of threads, and how they apply to the world of cyber, check out the Cyber 912 Challenge from the Atlantic Council. They have a big policy competition every year. That's international now. Social engineering competitions exist. It's, sometimes kind of creating phishing emails or other types of ways that you're looking to sort of manipulate pieces of information. Social engineering of LLMs and AI exists. And prompt engineering type challenges are quite common these days too. So regardless of your background, if you really like the math, if you really like the science, if you really like the psychology or the sociology, you like the policy, the law, there's something for you in the world of cybersecurity competitions, and certainly encourage you to kind of explore those. Here at the US Cyber Games program, I mentioned a commitment to sort of fusing cybersecurity competitions with esports and athletics. And what we've kind of seen through that trifecta is the evolution of what we refer to oftentimes as cognitive skills. And there are so many parallels in terms of, referring to the individuals in our program as athletes. We run seasons, we have scrimmages and competitions and tournaments and game days and training sessions, and all of the lingo is there, of course, but it's so much deeper than that, and so many of the golden threads, and I think you'll hear about some of these further when one of our featured speakers comes on, Dr. Lemon. But the cognitive skills aspect sort of sits at the middle of all of this. So we look at the technical skills. Are you familiar with tools? How do you use them? Do you build them? Those kinds of things, of course. The power skills or soft skills, teamwork, time management, problem solving, that kind of stuff, is absolutely critical as well. And then that third piece of the triangle is the cognitive skills. And that's the mental endurance, it's the situational awareness, it's the pattern matching and pattern recognition, your ability to adapt on the fly, and something that Commissioner Gulick started off with, the intuition and the instinct. And so this is what we talk about here at the US Cyber Games program. And as we really look to build new and different ways to train, to prepare, to create that team cohesion, it really comes down to these three pieces all coming together. And we see that just really skyrocket over our performance at some of these large international competitions over the past year and a half, specifically with some of our best finishes ever. A pipeline of talent here at the US Cyber Games program, and Jim, Mr. St. Pierre, talked a little bit about our alignment of our competition exercises and challenges to the NIST framework, of course, as well as the DoD 8140. So all of the challenges that you will see over the next couple of days through the beginner's game room and the competitive CTF have been mapped to various components of these very commonly leveraged frameworks. These frameworks, if you're not familiar with them, certainly check out the NIST framework. There's a great resource out there, cyberseek.org, that has quite a bit of information on careers in cybersecurity, at least domestically here in the United States, and more information about the NIST framework and some work paths or career paths into finding work in these fields. And then similarly, the DoD 8140, these two documents really do a lot to kind of create common lexicon in terms of how we talk about work in cyber. And so we know that as the US Cyber Games program, one of the benefits that our athletes appreciate is walking away from their experience here with the US Cyber Games program with a little bit more tangibility in terms of how their accomplishments and achievements, your accomplishments, your achievements, will allow them to kind of show off a little bit, whether it comes to college applications or applying to apprenticeships, your career search, and those kinds of things. By the numbers, over the past 5 seasons, we have engaged more than 12,000 players from all 50 states and the District of Columbia. And we have quite the international reach. I think this year with season 6, I'll share a little bit more about one of the new initiatives for the competitive CTF, but engaging international attendees and competitors has been a really big thing for us this year as we continue to establish those types of relationships with the global community here around cybersecurity workforce development, competitions, etc. Over 535 athletes have been part of our US Cyber Combine. We have selected 167 athletes over the last 5 seasons to join the US Cyber team formally. And we continue to really reach across the nation, looking for new and different ways to engage with various clubs, various organizations, classrooms, both at the K-12 level as well as at the undergraduate and graduate level, other CTF teams, and more. So if you like what you're hearing, if you like what you're doing with the US Cyber Games program, word of mouth is our best tool. And we always appreciate you bringing a friend or two, sharing it with your club, sharing it with your work, whatever the case may be. It's all free. It's all fun. We love to have as many folks join us and contribute to this community over the next couple of weeks as we launch season 6. To brag about our season 5 team a little bit, that's the team that just competed down in Australia at the international games. 15 athletes had at least 2 seasons of experience. That's well more than a third of the team has been around for quite some time. Part of the work here at the US Cyber Games program, we run a couple of CVE exercises. You'll hear from our attack and defense coaching lead, Chris Haller, next week as part of Cyber Rush Week. But he created an exercise where we do a little bit of CVE hunting. And through that process, we have discovered and disclosed 15 CVEs over the past year or so. Our athletes on the team are proficient in 9 different programming languages, and that list grows weekly, it seems like. And they've competed in a reported 2,700 plus CTFs in the recent history. So folks are busy, folks are engaged, folks are smart. It's just such a thriving group that we look forward to bringing together every year, sharing skills, sharing experiences, talking about what you like, what you don't like. It all makes us better, and we really look forward to kind of tracking a lot of that conversation as we move into the next couple of days. Just a quick time check here. I have about 5 minutes left. All right, I'm gonna get a move on it. In terms of what to expect, starting tomorrow, we will be opening the Beginner's Game Room CTF. This will open at 3 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. That is Friday, June 5th. This is an entry-level capture the flag. We'll have 13 challenges deployed for you, and there'll be a couple of warm-up challenges. Joining Discord is one of them. Reading the rules is another. And it's a great way to just kind of get your feet wet if you're brand new to it. Really explore what a CTF challenge looks like and what they're asking of you. All of the Beginner's Game Room challenges were built by our Season 5 US Cyber Games Pipeline Program athletes. So folks that have been in your shoes, they've participated in this event. And that will open up tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern. The competitive CTF will open on Monday. That's June 8th. And we will be opening that, I believe it's noon Eastern time on Monday is when the competitive CTF is opening up. And a new part of the competitive CTF is the Around the World category. And I have a slide thanking some of the contributors there, but we've worked with our international partners and colleagues to develop an entire category of challenges that feature their work. Across the board, in terms of categories for both the Beginner's Game Room and the competitive CTF, you'll see challenges in cryptography, forensics, pwn or binary exploitation, reverse engineering, web, hardware, and miscellaneous. So challenges across the board there, lots to offer you, really at all levels of proficiency as well. AI use. We have published the official rules. I will share a slide on that here coming up. That is available to you both in Discord as well as the CTF environment. So we expect that you will take a peek at those and behave accordingly. In terms of prizes, we always give out a Beginner's Game Room overall champion. So that is the one overall champion for the Beginner's Game Room. And then a competitive CTF slew of prizes, first place overall, second place overall, and third place overall. And then we'll have category winners for crypto, forensics, pwn, reverse engineering, and web. So you can expect that announcement to be made very shortly after the competition closes, which both the Beginner's Game Room and the competitive CTFs will end on Sunday, June 14th. I mentioned the Around the World. This is a brand new category, brand new component of the US Cyber Open. We've invited our international partners and colleagues to build challenges and submit them, some of them in their native tongue, but all of them really reflect kind of their take on what a CTF challenge looks like, which we've become really pleased to kind of learn that it looks quite different across the world. And when we, as the US Cyber team, go to competitions in Europe or in Asia or in Australia or in Latin America, the challenge development process just looks different. And some of them weigh tool usage more or research more or obscure tools or operating systems or whatever. And so offering a little bit of an international flavor as part of this. So shout out to Team Europe. Got a couple of challenges from them, Team Canada and Team Oceania, 0 Days CTF out of Ireland, the University of Pristina down in Kosovo, CTF Room in Kenya, the Technical University in Namibia, Cybersecurity Czech Republic, and the Women in Cybersecurity Middle East. So really cool collaboration there. We really hope you'll enjoy that aspect of the competition. Now for the AI policy. We are recently back from the international cybersecurity competition down in Gold Coast, Australia. And there was a really unique AI policy that was enforced there. At the end of the day, the US Cyber Games program was never designed to create competitions that were heavily dominated by the use of AI. And so our ask of you is that you help us maintain the integrity of CTFs. Our challenge developers put hours and hours and hours and years sometimes of work and experience into developing these challenges. And as a result of that, they really hope that you'll prioritize the learning aspect of solving these over the AI component. What we're looking for here at the US Cyber Games program is cybersecurity skill, and not necessarily AI skill. And that's not to discredit AI skill. AI skill is certainly critical in an ever-evolving world. And we know how important that is, and certainly encourage you to develop those skills as well. However, the US Cyber Open is really intended to prioritize the cybersecurity skills. And so through the process of the US Cyber Open and the Combine, we'll really be looking to evaluate the cybersecurity skill, because we know when we go as the US Cyber team into these international competitions, we're in environments where competitors operate with very limited to no access to AI throughout the entirety of the competition or the majority of the competition. So we respect you, or we kindly ask that you respectfully follow our AI policy here, in that there is a whitelisted set of models that you are allowed to use throughout the competition unless a challenge explicitly states otherwise. Throughout the competition, all of the coaches, mentors, and challenge developers have complete authority to reach out to any of our competitors and ask for a challenge write-up on a solve that you may have submitted. And so that is one of the ways that we will be kind of checking in on how well our policy is holding up. If you have any questions about this, please don't hesitate to reach out and get in touch with me or some of the other PlayCyber staff. Next week is the US Cyber Open Cyber Rush Week event. We'll kick things off on Monday with a From Hacking to Hiring workshop. Tuesday is a What Blue Teams Wish Red Teams Understood panel, moderated by our tech and defense coaching lead. Lots of great panelists lined up for that. Wednesday, another panel behind the jersey. So we'll be featuring a couple of our Season 5 US Cyber Team athletes to just kind of talk about what their experience has been like up towards the US Cyber Games, within the US Cyber Games, and what's next for them. And then Thursday is a hands-on AI red teaming workshop, AI Hack Labs from Cameron Bettridge. So really looking forward to all of these sessions next week. We'll be emailing out more information and sharing more via Discord as well. The US Cyber Combine. Some of you might be interested in pursuing a spot on the Season 6 US Cyber team. So whereas the US Cyber Open is totally free and available to anyone and everyone, regardless of age, background, skill levels, citizenship, all of that, the US Cyber Open is where we do start to apply some of the competition regulations put forth by the International Cybersecurity Competition Steering Committee. Part of that is the age requirement as well as the US citizenship status. So in order to be invited to the US Cyber Combine and ultimately be eligible for the Season 6 US Cyber team, you need to submit an application. That application is due Sunday, June 14th. There's a link at the bottom of the screen, apply.uscybergames.com. This kind of 10-week window is really designed to recruit, to scout, to observe, to assess, to evaluate, and it's meant to be fun. It's meant to be engaging. It is intense, but it's also really intended to give our athletes the opportunity to earn an advocate amongst the coach and mentor team, where they'll be looking to get to know you on a much more kind of individual level. So when it comes down to our coach and mentor summit and draft day, your name comes up more frequently in those conversations. The ICC, just a little bit about it. This is our large competition. We go to it every year. For the sake of time, I'll jump through. These are some of the places we've been over the past 5 seasons. The ICC itself is always at least a 2-day event with 1 day of Jeopardy style capture the flag and a 2nd day of attack and defense. Many countries are participating in this competition. And for the Season 6 US Cyber team, we will be headed to Dublin, Ireland for the ICC. Preparing for success, a couple of slides just to run through real quick. My biggest recommendation, and I think both Jess and Jim indicated early on, you'll get out of this experience what you put into it. And part of that is get curious and start simple. If this is brand new to you, get to know some of colleagues in Discord. Start to look up CTFs online and read some reviews about them, those kinds of things. Maybe find a category that really kind of resonates with what you're interested in. Follow content creators on YouTube, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. These kind of folks are offering their expertise for free all the time. So folks like IPSec and John Hammond, just to name a few. There's the Simply Cyber channel. There's so many others. Newsletters and YouTube feeds that are sharing, latest sort of threat briefs and, day in the news kind of stuff. And those that are doing deep dives on super technical, kind of very niche-y type stuff. So explore content creators out there all over the platforms and learn from them. Review published challenge write-ups. This is something that's quite common across the CTF community. You'll find them all over the place where folks are documenting their solve process, screenshots, explanations, all kinds of things, walking you through what was going through their head as they work their way through their problems. Build a home lab, tinker away. There's so many ways that you can go about this. Whether you're picking up some used hardware equipment, whether you're building something in the cloud, you have access through a school lab or something like that. Certainly encourage you to play around with those kinds of things. And then attend conferences or local meetups. There's just about anywhere across the globe you'll find stuff happening, probably monthly or at least quarterly, where folks are meeting, conferences are happening. Virtual, of course, is always an option. Learn, network, engage, and have some fun. Some of the skills that you may see some challenges sort of revolve around over the coming couple of days with both our beginners game room and our competitive CTFs. And then this is also published in the rules of engagement, our recommended tool list. These are all things that maybe keep in mind or sort of explore a little bit. You might find them helpful as you're working your way through some of the challenges. Last but not least, for those of you on the line that may be interested in coaching and mentoring here at the US Cyber Games program, we are certainly welcoming applications for Season 6. It is not too late to join. Coach and mentor opportunities really run the gamut from super technical and getting engaged with things like challenge development, technical lectures, infrastructure support and management, to things like athlete observations and supporting interviews, conference talks and research, participating in scrimmages. Something that we're really looking forward to this year is having our coaches and mentors more involved in some of the practices and the scrimmages and getting into the CTFs with our athletes, learning alongside them. We hear from our athletes all the time that's their favorite part of the program is when they really get to kind of work and nerd out with some of the coaches and mentors in the program. So if that sounds like fun to you, please reach out and let us know. We would love to have a conversation about what that looks like. With that, I think we have time for a quick break. We are going to run a 2-minute break, and then we will continue on with our run of show. Jess, how we doing?
We're doing great.
Right on. I will catch up on the chat while we are in commercial. Alrighty, folks, welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. I will go ahead and move us forward. Let me steal the screen share here. And at this time, it is my pleasure to welcome a colleague that has run around the similar circles for nearly a decade now. I have to imagine at least Dr. Lemon. I think we met out in NorCal probably close to about a decade ago. And still remember some of the remarks that you shared with us at that conference. And I've been really looking forward to welcoming you to the stage today. Dr. Lemon, whenever you're ready, the stage is yours.
Wow, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and let's see if I can get my screen shared. Thank you again for having me come here. It's just so fascinating. The information's awesome. And I really enjoyed what I was just hearing. So let's see if I can get this going. There we go. It looks like that's working.
Coming through.
Yep, coming through. Great. Awesome.
Got it.
So, yeah, I'm going to be talking about esports today. And my presentation is called Fast and Somewhat Chaotic, The Rise of Esports. And I got that phrase, fast and somewhat chaotic, while I was reading an article comparing Honor of Kings, great graphics, and Mobile Legends Bang Bang, which he described as fast and somewhat chaotic. And I read that description twice because I thought to myself, that is exactly how I would summarize esports in general and the rise of esports. So, and then after working on this presentation for a while, I thought it might actually be a good title describing my presentation. But let's see. Let's get started. So what is esports? Well, it's competitive video gaming. So it's also known as electronic sports. It's also called cyber sports in Russia, and it's professional video gaming. Do this real fast. How do we spell esports? Esports. It is a proper noun. AP established that in 2014. There is no camelback. There is no hyphen. It's not a subset of sports like e-cards or a subset of cards. It's like email now. We don't hyphenate and put the camelback because it's its own form of communication. Esports is its own industry and institution. So let's move on to here. This is what most people probably still imagine when they imagine gamers. I think it's a little less common, but certainly still prevalent with some of the communities I talk to. They have a hard time imagining professional video gaming and in the world of esports athletes. And they would really have a hard time imagining something like this. And this is actually a scene from Sweden, the League of Legends Worlds last year, beautiful arena. So is esports a sport? And I know that cyber sports are looking at the same thing. And really all sports, we all started here, right? Who's stronger? Who can throw something the farthest, lift the heaviest, or run fastest? The big game changer came when we started using equipment. So technology, which just means the working knowledge of craftsmanship, once technology came into competitives, we found that the rules changed. That got a little more, there had to be procedures, there had to be regulations. What kind of equipment and how are you allowed to use it? And this has continued on as it's evolving into different sport categories. So we have more equipment. A lot of it's now digitized. And so more strategy and finesse are being emphasized. And it's really not a far leap to get here. So here with esports, you've got a team of players who are using multiple pieces of equipment, looking at a screen, determining what's happening, determining how to respond, pulling together a strategy, communicating this to the team, hearing what the team members have to say, and at the same time, they're doing 10 to 12 moves per second. Absolutely an athlete. So sports and esports, they're both umbrella terms. Sports does not refer to one game. So under the umbrella of sports, you have multiple platforms. You might have arenas, you might have fields, swimming pools, rings, horses. Same with esports. It's not one game. There's actually multiple platforms. You have your PC games, you have your console games, handholds, mobile games, VR rigs, and even unique platforms like DDR for Dance Dance Revolution. When it came to viewership, people frequently asked me, why would somebody want to go to an arena to watch people play video games? And I always say to them, well, it's what you relate to. It's what you want to watch, right? So who are gamers? Well, let's do some myth busting because the traditional gamer is supposed to be out of shape, male, white or Asian, young, antisocial, not high achieving, definitely wants to study game design or maybe computer science, but unable to earn a living in esports, which is why he's still in the basement of his parents' home. However, that is just not the case. So we're going to take a look at and dispel those myths. The gamer demographic is the demographic of your community. It is global, but when you look at gamers, 85% of high school students now game at least a couple of times a week. College students game. The history of gamers being around has been around for as long as we've been able to develop games. So they're a fair representative of the community you're in. So none of them are particularly out of shape or in shape. They're just the regular people that are in your community. When it comes to the professional esports players that are high profile in the big tournaments, you're going to find that those teams have esports coaches, they have doctors, they have nutritionists, they are kept in shape because a stronger body does produce better mental acuity, and they can handle the stress of all the travel and all of the competitions. This is Dr. Levi Harrison, who I worked with one of my classes, and he's a pretty remarkable guy. He's an orthopedic surgeon, but he also himself is a passionate gamer. So the statistics for male versus female. For as far back as they were collecting data on both male and female, we can see it's a pretty even split in interest in gaming. Prior to about 2000, the statistics didn't include female because it was kind of an assumption they were looking at the sales for male purchases for gaming. And then later when they realized there were a lot of women who were gaming, they brought those statistics back in. They really haven't changed much. This went to 2020, but I looked at the current statistics and it continues right on. Except for now it's becoming a little more broken out. Women are edging out men in terms of mobile gaming. And since the games actually started, the esports games hit the mainstream, we're seeing a drop in interest of PC games among females. And I do talk to schools about that and people in the community about that and what's causing that and how we might work around that. Women in esports, there are women in these positions. There's Tactical Grandma, she's one of my favorites. They are in the different positions that you would normally associate with esports, but admittedly, they are very few. It's still something that we are working on to try to get more acceptance in there, to get more foothold. But again, esports is, even though it's not brand new, it's still struggling with how it's going to be formatted for the public. So Microsoft did some amazing work with adaptive technology. And because of that, we have people that, even though they have a lot of challenges, they're still able to compete in legit tournaments on teams. The quad gods are one of the most notable. You also have age-wise, you have the Silver Snipers. They're a professional team. I think they're coming out of Sweden. And that has not held them back whatsoever. And of course, the first Neuralink patient, when they got his neurochip in, the first thing he was doing was gaming. So, and found that he's actually really good and really fast, which is not to be surprised. So it'll be very interesting to see how that rolls out in the future as the Neuralink becomes more common or ubiquitous. Shroud himself, who was a CSGO player, actually gave a talk about why you can still be pro at 50. There's nothing physically that would hold you back if you're staying in shape, because even though you might move some of the earlier fine motor movements, the strategy and the experience you have and knowing your players and knowing yourself actually is an advantage. So the myth that you have to be young in order to compete, we're going to see that slowly shifting. Originally, it looked like younger players, but now the average age of a pro player is in the mid to late 20s. The youngest one I could find was an 8-year-old gamer who got signed for Team 33 for Fortnite. The viewage for viewership, the average, I like these. I've got two different slides to show you here. With the average age of an esports viewer was 32, sometimes 34, around 2016, very important year. And you can see that the other sports are actually aging out. And so when I looked at the current stats, still aging out on traditional sports, but you look at the esports viewership age and it's dropped. It's now 29 or 26, depending on what source I found. And this is remarkable because the amount of viewership simply continues to grow. We have not lost ground with viewership. It's still massive and getting more massive. And so to be able to bring the stats down is reflecting the enormous amount of young people who are going into esports and want to view esports. So that's a testament to that growth. Are gamers social? Oh yeah, they're very social. It's not just like the console players who want to be together and do some Smash games. They got to be together, or should be. And then they do a lot of socializing together. But my main point I want to make is, because this is the demographic of your community, if you are an introvert or a loner, you're not going to change because of esports. The same with, if you're very extroverted, you're not going to change because you're a gamer. So that idea that you're always a loner down in your basement, that just doesn't apply really anywhere. And even if you are, the lower left screen there shows a lot of people, when they saw them gaming what looked like by themselves, they didn't realize that they had these running chats and they had this way to communicate while they were gaming anyway. So the idea of that being a lonely pastime is also debunked. There's a lot of actual community events that occur within in-game. And so people can get together and actually participate in these concerts and things that are being promoted through the games themselves. Are they good students? Yes, this is one, again, a chapter in my course is, I've looked at over 40 years of psychology with gaming, and it's been debunked so many times that there's no tie. There is no tie between violence and gaming. And I'm always surprised when I find a new study, because they're just kind of not letting go of that yet. But the National Institute for Health actually went on a study recently to try to find out what are the potential negative effects of gaming. And we're actually finding that no, there just aren't any, that they do have superior visual, spatial, and attention skills. So, and these are scholarship winners from UC San Diego. And the other reason I like looking at this, you can check their page on the San Diego website, but you can look at the scholarships that these students have and what field they're in. And you can see it's all over. It's cognitive science, Japanese studies, history, psychology, data science, international business. They don't all want to be video game designers. They don't all want to go into computer science. So again, it's the full demographic of your community. What students come into the college, they're bringing their gaming to that field. So let's take a look at the rise of esports. So is it new? No, it actually, the first tournament was in 1972. The game Space War was invented in 62, but it took until we could get computers into the schools and into people's homes before we could actually start having these tournaments. With people that were in the design labs, either in the military or in the government, they were actually already, the minute they would start these computers, they would invent a game to work on them with. So it was very exciting. And Rolling Stone actually covered this, which is amazing that they did. But this was the first time gamers got together and said, let's compete and actually see who's better at this game. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail with the games crash of 83. That's a whole seminar in itself. But between 83 and 85, there was a whole lot of, before 83, there was a lot of slushware that came into the market for the handhelds and the consoles. And it just killed any of its credibility. And so the market just pretty much melted away at like 90, 95%. It really crashed. And so people lost confidence. They didn't buy it. It could have been really bad. People actually said it was a fad. Video gaming's a fad. It's just like a pet rock. But what helped gaming stay in the picture was the personal computers, because now you had people purchasing computers at home for work or for email or whatever they wanted it for. And there were PC games designed to be on those machines. So they were willing to invest in a computer. And now we had the games continuing through. So it carried the PC gaming world and allowed it to continue growing. They did recover, consoles recovered, but that's another story. So in futurism, we talk about signals, and signals are things that happen or that we spot or that we can feel coming that say there's going to be a shift somewhere. And there were some major signals for esports and when it collided with the mainstream. And that's what I want to talk about, some of the really key ones. And for me, one of the most important was Justin Kan. Justin Kan did Justin TV. He started in 2007, just a guy who decided to wear a camera pretty much 24/7 and let people watch his life. And it was really popular. And so he created Justin TV so that people could also sign up and be able to do this and load their videos on his site. And I actually was one of those people. Fortunately, it's gone. But what happened was he had so many users, he divided it into categories, and he decided, by topic of what people were actually doing the videoing of. And one of these was, of course, gaming. And what he found out by 2011, that gaming channel had grown so huge, so many people streaming and so many people watching those streams, that he spun off the channel into another component in his company and called it Twitch. And Twitch then became even larger, so that by 2014, he just rebranded it to Twitch entirely, just dropped the Justin TV and said Twitch. The importance of this is that the gamer community was unaware of the size and power of that community. People knew that they gamed, and they knew people around them who gamed, and when they traveled, they would hear about local tournaments. But they didn't understand the size. They were watching people video and went, wait, look how many people are gaming and how many people are doing these games that I want to get better at. And so suddenly now we could get statistics on just how many people were gaming and what games they were looking at. And this, because of the pervasiveness of gamers within the community, there were people obviously talking to industry. And that was one of the biggest bombshells that dropped in the industry. Was only a few months, it went from February to July, after he branded his company Twitch, Amazon paid $1 billion for it. In 2014, this was mind-boggling. And in fact, even Microsoft had the opportunity to get into this and they passed. So this was a huge, huge flag. I think Justin TV itself, watching the growth of it, that was a huge signal. And then seeing Twitch's purchase was a huge signal to most of the other industries. So now we have statistics. So 2016 is the big year of change. 2016, they went through the traditional statistics for just viewers that watched games, right? So traditional sports. So we have 23 million viewers who watch the World Series, and 20 million NBA, and 18 Final Four. And then the statistics came out about League of Legends, that it was a 43 million count viewership. I mean, just 43 million were streaming the League of Legends World Championship. And that, again, was mind-boggling. And suddenly everybody was going to take a look at the gamer community and what was going on with esports in the United States at this point. So a second signal that was important was Pokemon Go. And Pokemon Go also started in 2016 at the US in August. And they were looking at the time to 50 million users. Today, we don't think much about 50 million users. There's a lot of apps that get that pretty quickly. But in 2016, with the equipment we had, that was a lot of people. And you can see over there on the left all the different devices and how long it took. Took Facebook, the first couple of years of Facebook was curated, so that couldn't really count. But then after that, it still took 2 years to get the 50 million users. And YouTube took a year to get 50 million users. And Pokemon Go took 19 days. And I had a chance to actually chat with some of the Niantic people at a conference, and they said, oh yeah, that was like crazy, because all they could think of was the servers have to stay up. That's all they could think, because nobody anticipated this. And again, it was a really good indicator of how many gamers were out there, how many wanted to be part of this, how many wanted to be with their friends, even with an AR mode. But it was a big signal of the size of the gamer community. The next thing they started looking at is, where's the money coming from for these tournaments? I mean, how are people sponsoring a lot of this stuff? And it was assumed that it would be technical companies, Microsoft for the equipment, or Logitech. And they were part of it. But there were also a lot of non-endemic sponsors, people that were not directly associated with esports or with gamers. And so, again, it's a reflection of how gamers were permeating all industry, and we're saying, hey, I'd like to sponsor this tournament. Hey, I'd like you to be a sponsor for these teams. And so that made everybody sort of sit up, because now it wasn't, a direct link to gamers. This was Ben & Jerry's deciding that the ice cream company was going to sponsor a local tournament. In terms of physical presence, stadium stats. So in 2014, 40,000 seats sold out in under an hour in South Korea. It didn't really make our mainstream news here. It did in the gamer community, but not mainstream because it was South Korea. However, in 2016 in the Staples Center, They sold out in minutes. And that did make news. And when they came to the Cow Palace in San Francisco, we were not able to get tickets, but we had a cooperative at that time set up with a Japanese college, and they came over to see the World's Fair with us, and they were able to get us tickets, or we would not have been able to go. But this did make news. So Nielsen looked at all this, and Nielsen collects data on viewership. They decided that they were going to make an entirely new division to measure esports. This is key because they didn't put it under traditional sports. They didn't just have another department under something else. They literally created an entirely new division just to measure esports. And on that notice, you saw Comcast and Dish Network, all the different streaming services came up and decided, yeah, we need esports channels. We need to have track our own viewership now with esports. And so the stats came out, and it was very obvious that Twitch was now the dominant streaming service over everybody else. And that was remarkable. And showed that Amazon knew exactly what they were doing. And curiously, the next year it came out showing the unique viewers. And while the League of Legends in 2016 was 43 million, by the next year it was 46 million when they had it at Katowice. So International Olympic Committee, they've been struggling for years with viewership dropping consistently over the years. And they looked at all those stats and decided, yes, esports are sports. So we were really happy to hear that, but they have struggled for years trying to figure out how they're going to make that work. And so they've had like side tournaments at different Olympics, like at the Tokyo Olympics and stuff, but they finally came to a resolution, which we'll get to at the end of this presentation. So the next big signal was Ninja, who in the end of 2018, at the New Year's Eve celebration in New York, decided to announce his earnings for the year, and they were $10 million. And what this did was, it was obvious not everybody was going to make $10 million, but it solidified streaming as a legitimate money-making endeavor. That the streaming can be something. This can be a profession, or at least a job for a while. So there was money in it. And again, people sat up and took notice. This was independent. This was no longer industry generated. These were individual gamers who were creating their own income streams. So the revenue streams prior to 2017, so basically the stats from 2016, nobody bothered to segment where are these revenue streams coming from. Nobody really, they were like, oh, they made this amount of money, but nobody looked at where is this money coming from. And so from 2017 on, you would find the segmentation saying, yeah, this is sponsorship, this is tickets, this is advertising. So now they had a way to track exactly where the money was coming from and where the smart places to invest would be. The esports market report for this year came out, and in 2025, they actually earned a little over $3 billion, and they're forecasting 7.7 for 2030. The reason I really like this slide is because early days when I would show the market reports, they were saying, oh, 2025, like 1.8 billion, or God, wouldn't it be amazing if we got $2 billion? And you can see here, we actually got over $3 billion. So they're still, it's more than people estimate. So the growth rate has not slowed. The esports awareness population, this just means when you say the word esports, do people know what you mean? It does not mean that they're players or gamers. It just means they're aware that esports is a thing. And it's right now at 3.24 billion, which represents a third of the global population. More interesting if you really, I would like to see statistics on esports awareness for people connected to the internet, because it just says global population. And of course that could include like newborn children and things like that. So I'm not actually sure the sheer numbers, but that's what they're saying based on the global population. So globally, soccer still dominates. They're still the number one most watched sport globally, far above anybody else. But this year we have esports in the number 2 slot, and they're still growing. So I don't know that they'll catch soccer, maybe not, but they are now in a really interesting place over all other traditional sports. Some new things that occurred were recently was Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard, and they paid $68.7 billion for it, and it was an all-cash offer. This is important because it shows forecast-wise, they have complete faith that every single dollar will be worth that it is going to continue to expand and burgeon out, that this is an industry that they see a clear path to what their expectations are looking forward. So really impressive statistic. Again, another one, EA was purchased for $55 billion, again, all cash. This is taking a more interesting turn because these are private equities. These are not public companies. These are going private, and this is owned by the Saudi Arabia and purchased through their personal wealth fund. And they also have a company called Savvy, which bought Scopely, who bought Niantic and several other gaming companies. So Saudi Arabia right now is in a move to start purchasing a lot of these gaming and esports companies, and to see what might be coming from that. But this might have something to do with it. And now we know there will be an inaugural Olympic esports game, the actual esports games, to be held in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia in 2027. So I think they're preparing for that. They are definitely going to be a big dominating force in the esports world in the days to come. This, by the way, is Olympic esports. This is not a subset under traditional esports. This is now a complete Olympic Games that will be centered around and including esports. And I'm going to be watching this closely because I want to see like what games will be included. Will they do different platforms? Will it be predominantly PC based? Will they have the first person shooters included, along with the third person map games? It'll be very interesting to see that going forward. For me now, looking at with esports and cyber games, so they're both athletes. You guys are both doing pretty incredible things with a lot of equipment, a lot of finesse, a lot of strategy. They're viewership wise, and viewership is money. I mean, that's why you see all of these companies getting into esports, is because they want the viewership. They want eyes on, and that drives ad revenues and brand awareness and things like that. So esports are a little bit easier, especially if it's third person and it's map based, because it's sort of like going to a football game. Maybe you don't know anything about football, but you recognize two end zones and you know when there's a touchdown. So watching esports game, you can see there's, let's say, League of Legends, you got the two towers of either side. You know that one's got to get down to the other one and destroy it, and then they win. But it's sort of like watching a track meet at the Olympics too. You see the field, you know where the start is, you know where the finish is. Cyber games are a little more like watching a marathon. There's a whole lot of stuff going on, and there's a lot of strategy going on, but it's harder to see if you're not really familiar with how that goes. And I think that's part of the challenge going forward. I know Brad had mentioned, he was talking about Japan, that was taking a look at how could they get an interface overlay that would help people watch it, so they could see how exciting it is and see the progress and the stops and starts, which I think would be awesome. But for viewers watching cyber games, you really kind of have to know the code and understand what the process is to really get a feel for how tight that is and how stressful that can be. I know that he also mentioned something called Cyber Flash, which I think is also going to be a real plus, because having something short term where you have a ticking clock, that also really makes it more exciting to watch. And I think it also means there might be a series of protocols, but now you have to innovate a little bit, because you have to determine, do I want to follow this protocol, or do I need to shortcut in order to be able to get to my my objective? Cyber competitives. Well, I wanted to look at let me look at what they're a little bit different, and let me know how I'm doing on time here.
Yeah, I think if we can start to wrap it up a little bit, that'd be good.
Yep. Okay. Yeah,
Thanks.
that's absolutely fine, because I forgot to turn my timer on. I'm so sorry. But yeah, no, I was gonna talk about how they're slightly different. But you know what? I can always leave that for another time. Thank you so much for coming to this. I know it's a lot of data all at once, but I am happy to talk to anybody or do a seminar, or anybody can reach out and contact me to take a look at the materials, or to have a session on any particular specific area that I touched on today.
Well, share with us one thing that you think cyber competitions and esports have in common. Where were you going with that?
I think what I like is that they both they're both global. So I think they both have a tremendous outreach, which is really helpful because it's very supportive if it's not something localized. I think they both are at this point looking to be recognized. I mean, the skills are recognized as a job, but recognizing these as particular competitions, I think they both are looking for validation in it and trying to get that growth up. They're both looking for the viewership, which to get that respect and recognition, because yours is kind of niched in like a highly secured area, which makes it a little more difficult. And also to branch out because you're, put into departments where you have a specific demographic going in, and esports has the problem with all the different stereotypes. So you're both facing different challenges, but you both literally are kind of doing the same thing. You're doing, a game that has a goal.
Yeah. Absolutely fascinating stuff. Wonderful presentation today, Dr. Lemon. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And certainly, Jess and I are big believers that we're driving the similar trajectory. So one of these days, we're
Yes.
looking for a 3.2 bill.
Yes, absolutely.
Dr. Lemon, thank you so much for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Really appreciate you joining us this afternoon. And as we're moving forward, I get the pleasure to welcome our next featured speaker, Mr. Zion. Second time working together. Welcome back. Thrilled for your talk today. For those of
Hey,
you that
Brad.
don't know Zion, gotten to know Zion through his work with SHELLPHISH, but he's here to tell you about some of the other cool stuff that he's been working on. So over to you whenever you're ready.
All right. Can you see these slides?
We sure can.
All right, brilliant. So I'm going to talk to you guys today on a shorter side of this talk. We're going to do a little bit more of the technical side. You've heard some great information today already about the concept of a game, right? All of this great work by Dr. Lemon here. And you've also heard from Brad about how AI is changing much of this field rapidly. And when you mix these two things together, AI and a game, you have some interesting interactions. So today I want to talk about some of it. And I want to either dispel some pain or some worry many of you might have, but also kind of double down on that this is a very different game than it was a few years ago. So let's talk about it a little bit on the state of CTFs in the age of LLMs. So quickly, who am I? Who is this guy who is going to be yapping at you about CTFs? Well, I am an assistant professor at the University of Georgia. Very recently, in fact, I graduated with my PhD from Arizona State just this last May. I am also a visiting research faculty at the Air Force Research Lab. That's where I am currently. And I am a previous captain of SHELLPHISH. In all of these areas, I do the same type of work, which is work on researching autonomous hacking, on decompilation, on reverse engineering. Essentially, how can we automate the things that hackers are so incredibly good at, or help them do their job better so that we can find bugs faster, so we can do 0 days faster. And competing on SHELLPHISH has really helped me kind of focus what we want to do in that area. But more important than all of these things, I am a hacker man. Much like yourself, all of you epic competitors, there's something different when you enter the space of hacking, when you need to figure out how to break things, how to understand things, how to do it competitively. And for the last decade or so, I have been competing in this competitions, capture the flags, much like all of you are training up for, which we'll be doing greater and greater things for with SHELLPHISH, is what I've been doing. So there's big questions now of what actually is a hacker. In 2026, you may look at the news and you may look at other competitions, and hackers may, in fact, just be a big, large language model, right? Your hacker man is actually just a guy who has ChatGPT and is really good at prompting. And so this has kind of been a big concept that has changed a lot of the field. I'll say it started in January. In January of 2026, we started seeing something change between all of us in this competition. And that is the use of LLMs in more than just a ChatGPT prompt, but in the use of agents. Well, exactly what does that mean, and how does it relate to what's really going on, right? Lots of these AI companies want to hype us up that these large language models are already expert hackers. And maybe they in fact are. So let's actually talk about it and what are some real data that's been happening during this time period of LLM insurgence, right? CTFs and autonomous hacking. How do they go together? What is it? What does this all mean? So let's first define what an agent is, just to really dispel what previously was ChatGPT. If you're still living in 2025, right, ChatGPT is something you use in the web browser. You paste in text, input is text, output is text. But in 2026, everyone uses agents, which is, of course, putting ChatGPT in something like Codex or Claude Code if you're a real hacker, and doing things with tools. For instance, here is Ghidra, a common hacking tool, a decompiler. And here a LLM agent is calling decompile main. So it can use tools that hackers traditionally use, or in other domains, it can use tools which are specific to those domains. For instance, if you're a doctor, maybe it can use something like using, like a heart rate sensor. It can do things like that. These are different tools. And then on the other end of this is some guy, there's me on the far left, who gives a good prompt like, please solve, make no mistakes. Of course, this is troubling because that prompt on the left-hand side is a very, very simple prompt. And in January, we saw a lot of people using this exact prompt, please solve, make no mistakes, with an agent that only had access to Bash. And these agents were able to do incredible things in CTFs. It was quite concerning. So for instance, here is what CTF time looked like in this period. We'll say between January up and through April. At the top of the CTF time leaderboard, which is the leaderboard for the top competitive hacking teams on the entire planet, we had this team called Gulick. Gulick is a team which only uses AI for autonomous solving. They are not necessarily an expert in this field at all. They're not really a very good hacker per se, but they use AI. So they are very much of this type of mindset where you say, please solve, make no mistakes. And between this period of January and April, we saw them at the top of the leaderboard, beating every single team who was run by humans and every team of experts, including SHELLPHISH. Of course, we are not on this CTF time ranking now, and all the other teams from different countries. And that's really quite concerning. This hit a lot of people. There was a lot of rage that went on Twitter. A lot of people said, I'm quitting CTFs, it's over. There's autonomous solving. Now we speed up a few more months. We actually speed up to just 2 weekends ago. Let's talk about the hardest CTF on the planet, or what we refer to as the kind of Olympics of all of Capture the Flag, of the hacking community, where we pour it all into one thing, and that is DEF CON CTF, or DEF CON Finals. Just 2 weekends ago was DEF CON Qualifier. It is a qualifying competition where around 2,000 teams will compete for 12 slots in the finals. So it is really kind of a best of the best. Everyone comes here to compete. And everyone was wondering at the start of this competition, what is the impact of AI now? Are large language models going to run the entire game? How is hacking different? Because this is where the teams who are serious come back, right? They wake up, SHELLPHISH comes out of hibernation and decides to play. In fact, we qualified, just happened 2 weekends ago. We qualified for DEF CON Finals again. This is our 22nd year qualifying for DEF CON Finals, the most qualifications in history. But the more important thing about this number is the history vision, or what we have seen over these 22 years, and how the competition continues to evolve. Because there have been phases that have changed Capture the Flag and then eventually change hacking. Because these hackers who play in these Capture the Flags and are at the top of this kind of area, they go on to become great leaders in this field. They work at DARPA, they work in the government, they work at top companies, they go on to found different labs. These are all the people who really run cybersecurity, and they're coming from these competitions. So this kind of gives us a way to see what's going to happen or what has actively happened. So DEF CON qualifiers just happened, right? Here's the final leaderboard from the end of the game. These are the teams that qualify, the top 12. You'll see SHELLPHISH slides by there in 11. There's a lot of information here, but there's only 2 bits of really important info. The first thing I want you to look at is this indicator that the organizers required every team to mark, which is if the team was human-led AI, i.e. a significant portion of the competition was done with AI as an assistant or using AI to solve these challenges. You could also opt in to say that you were low AI usage, so very little use of ChatGPT or any agents, or you could even say you were no AI usage, which was on the rarer side. You'll find that every single team that qualified this year was actually a high AI user. That is the top 15 you'll see here, and this goes all the way into 35. So the top hackers on the entire planet are all heavy AI users right now in this hacking. And that really shows you, wow, how this is all shifting. The field has rapidly shifted. And I want to give you a little perspective on what that looked like inside of our team as well. But before we get to that, I just want to dispel a little bit of myths here, because a lot of teams are saying that, oh no, finals is going to have a bunch of people who qualify, who don't know what they're doing, who only use AI. They prompt a very simple prompt, and then all of a sudden they qualify. But here is the leaderboard of the top 12, the teams that went to finals between 2026 and 2025. You'll notice something interesting. There is actually a very, very high overlap. Most of the teams that were in 2025 qualifying, which was pre-LLM agents, actually qualified again in 2026, which is strange. That's anti-narrative, right? That is very different from what we were led to believe, that AI has made it so that anyone is a hacker, when in fact, that doesn't seem to be true based on these different finals results between 2025 and 2026. Actually, 75% of the teams that qualified in 2026 were already very good teams, world-class hackers, pre-LLM. There was only 3 teams that changed this, and many are believed to have come from other teams. So really, what was the impact here? If all of the teams from 2025 to 2026 remained, and AI is changing the entire field, why is the leaderboard largely the same? Well, after talking to some teams and also our internal infrastructure, how we developed our own team of AI agents and our team of humans, we figured out that most teams right now are using AI agents in the way we are, which is making the most supreme automated hacker possible using the hacker knowledge that we personally have acquired over the last few decades. And that's really important because that's what all of you are doing right now. So let's talk about it, right? What happened to these agents? How did SHELLPHISH do it? How are these other teams doing it? Well, the best hackers make the best hacking tools and the best hacking agents. That is kind of the gist of all of this. We talked to a few teams. We figured out what's going on. We are all using LLMs heavily, but somehow we are all still in the finals. And that's because we have all gone around this route of making AI agents that are more powerful than ever based on what we've already been doing for making our team better, which is making good hacker tools. And this is really shifting the game and how I think all of you should think about your training going into the future of how you become better hackers on a world-class level. It's not just about upping your own skill, but once you've taken that skill, encode it into tools that actually make your life better. An example of this, for those of you who do binary exploitation, is a ROPing thing, like ROP agent or a ROPer tool, right? There have been many ROP chain generators over the years. This is one example of a tool that makes your life better. So in 2026, right, this is what it's all about. The best builder wins. And that's actually kind of fun because hackers are also usually builders, except we make tools to break other things. So in 2026, the best teams are those who will be able to build the best hacking agent. And this is actually rather impactful because these agents are pretty good at finding 0 days as well. So SHELLPHISH had its own hacking agent during this competition where there were 23 challenges. And it was kind of, I'll say, astonishing at how different it is this year of having an AI agent next to you. It's more like a teammate. It's not like a tool. It is a real thing you converse with, you interact with. Across the entire competition of 48 hours, it was used for almost all of those hours by 90 different people for over 1,135 messages, and it contributed to 23 exploits. A few of them autonomously, which we had to go back and solve due to the rules of the competition. Funny enough, here's a question from one of the people on our team who is pretty famous. He has found multiple 0 days in the Linux kernel, and you can see him talking to our AI agent and being like, what the heck, you've obtained RIP control, right? You're already here poning this binary, give me the script. Right, so even he is a little astonished at how fast that this is moving. We're already in a period of craziness. So there's kind of 2 things I want to touch on what this agent looked like. Shelly is what we called it. Shelly was this AI agent we made for competition during DEF CON quals. First thing that was different about this is Shelly was something we talked to in our Discord. If you're making a new tool, make it easy for all of your teammates to use. Just slap it into Discord with a webhook, something like that. Here is Shelly talking to one of my teammates, Klasm, and another teammate, Hanak. of Pwn College fame. These people are talking to Shelly, and Shelly's giving responses while directly reverse engineering the binary. So it has access to all of the hacking tools that we had. And that was really important because when you're going to develop your own hacking agent, something that will change the kind of way you hack, you need to give it more than just a good prompt. A good prompt will not make you world class, and it will not make an agent that is actually powerful enough to do this type of hacking. So I don't think you should be worried about the beginner challenges. You should be worried about this large scale. So how did you actually make an agent that's better? Well, you can encode a lot of the hacking knowledge you've generated over time. I encourage you to start making tools, to start writing down strategies for hacking. If you've ever learned from our own repo called How to Heap, which is heap exploitations for binary, this is actually what we powered our agent with and made it able to do heap exploitation by reading our own manual that we created for the community, or using different hacking tools. For instance, BinSync is something we made to connect two hackers and make them able to talk to each other while reverse engineering over like IDA or Ghidra. And in fact, all of these things are incredibly useful for humans and something you should do while you are on your hacking journey. What's fun about this is what you're doing for humans is actually incredibly relevant for making a hacking agent. And that's exactly what we did, because it takes a little bit more than just find prompts. You need to think like a hacker and teach your agent how to work like a hacker. And that usually means good tools, good strategies. So very briefly, what this looked like during the competition is we had our agent here at the top. It would get a binary, and then me and a different hacker, we would talk to this agent as it hacked while we were also hacking on the side, usually with other extra agents. So this guy is working in a loop. In one specific example, there was a binary that took up about 20% of the context of this LLM agent. That's actually not that much context. However, when an LLM agent has 20% of the context taken up, it's still going to keep working. It's still doing things. It's reverse engineering, it's thinking, it's writing its own thoughts to itself and then putting them back in. So 20% context can actually get filled up to 100 pretty fast when it starts thinking about it. In one instance, we saw that these agents had something called hyperfocus, where it thinks there's a bug in this very specific location. And it just keeps focusing on that bug and writes an exploit. The exploit fails. It keeps trying, writes a new exploit, same bug. It keeps thinking a bug. Well, in fact, that bug isn't a good bug. It's a false positive. It doesn't really exist there. Or it's just a bad bug. It doesn't get you a real exploit. And we see an LLM agent just hyper-focus on it. And unfortunately, this doesn't get fixed by a context either, because compacting causes it to forget that it had already explored that entire bug. And this is the state-of-the-art LLM. This is ChatGPT 5.5, which we've seen is the best at hacking, and it still fails. So, now we're thinking, okay, well, how are we going to get this agent unstuck? This is on a real challenge during DEF CON Falls. So we talk to it. I talk to it and I say, hey, Shelly, you're doing a pretty poor job right now. This is not where the bug is. That is not it. Please stop doing this. I tell it to Shelly. Shelly agrees with me that that is not the bug. And then it forgets it once it compacts it again, and we're stuck in a loop forever. In fact, all of my efforts to tell it not to do something caused it to continue to do the thing, which is infuriating. And interestingly, 5 hours later, my old advisor, Jan, of Pwn College fame as well, Zardis, he goes to the agent and he says this simple phrase: this code is high in entropy. And all right, well, what does that mean? High entropy means there's a lot of variation in the code or in this data. All of a sudden, the LLM agent goes, oh my God, you're totally right. And it sends back a flag, which is absurd because it's like, how does that happen, right? We have an agent running, stuck in a loop. I tell it to stop something. It doesn't stop. He says high entropy, and all of a sudden it has the correct grasp all the way to getting a flag. And unfortunately, or fortunate for the hackers, this is the real limitation of agents, is this insight, these hacker insights. Entropy is a great indicator of when something is interesting in a binary if someone is hiding data. So often a hacker just thinks like that. Where can I hide some data? But LLMs aren't hackers. They're software engineers at best, right? You need to teach these agents. And by giving these simple phrases or sometimes strategies, you actually fundamentally change how powerful this whole context setup is at solving the challenge. And that's because there is more to these LLMs than just their intelligence, right? In 2026, the best builder wins, and a hacker agent has many things to build. There is, of course, the LLM that runs like a brain, right? This is the intelligence of the agent, but there is much more to develop. There is the workflow, the way tools interact with each other, how it interacts with all the other things in the ecosystem. There are the tools, developing your own decompiler, developing your own symbolic executor. And then there are the connectors. How does an agent actually talk to the rest of the team? These fundamentally change how good an agent is at hacking and really exposes this new paradigm of development for this hacking world, right? There's really three axes now. There is LLM intelligence, which is, of course, what all the LLM companies will tell us is the most important thing. Maybe it is. But then there is also hacking tool quality, the tools that you guys are going to build as you learn how to find better and deeper bugs in these different challenges you're doing. And then there is the workflow design, which is, okay, I have all these tools and I have this LLM intelligence. How do I make the tools interact with each other? And how do I make a strategy for actually hacking better? I encourage all of you, because although the frontier models are banned for this competition, maybe it won't be in the future. Who knows? I don't know. During this period of ramp up where you're becoming better and better hackers, you should be doing this part. You should be making better hacking tools that actually transfer the knowledge you have learned into real standard things. You do have to keep doing the challenges. Don't auto solve all challenges. If you don't learn something, this is all kind of pointless. But if you take that knowledge and you imbue it into tools that make your life better, you can now start having a real powerful hacking agent like the best teams in the world. And then once you start moving on to greater things after you've developed these tools and you have a cool hacking agent, start thinking about how you can take that impact to the real world. Things like Pwn to Own. This is where you should start thinking about how to build your own agent. Encourage everybody on these teams that are going to be competing in the competition for the US Cyber Games to consider how would you transfer your knowledge as a hacker. It really makes you a fundamentally better worker and a better hacker. So really check it out, try it. These are things that can have a big impact in the community. So don't lose hope, right? There's a lot changing in the world. There's a lot changing in CTFs. We're seeing that as SHELLPHISH, one of the oldest teams in existence, things are changing. But they're not all bad. Some of them are really fun. So try it. Don't lose hope. Start hacking. Start building the tools that you think will actually improve your life as a hacker and have some impact. It can be a great time to do it. And on that note, I am done. I would love to take any questions you all might have. I love technical questions too for any time that I have left. And P.S. I'm looking for PhD and master's students at the University of Georgia. So if this stuff is cool to you, consider joining.
Right on. First and foremost, congratulations. I completely forgot that I had seen your recent achievement. That's phenomenal.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
congratulations on achieving your PhD. If that sounds cool to you, having known Zion virtually for the past couple of years, couldn't recommend a better mentor, someone to get to know. Absolutely brilliant as always. Tons of great comments in the chat here. I think for the sake of time, we'll probably keep things rolling a little bit. If you find yourself
questions in the Discord, I can always answer them there asynchronously or during other talks. So if you have questions, guys, put it in the Discord. I can find it there.
Amazing. And hopefully we'll see you in the CTF. Starts on Monday. We would love to get your feedback on some of what we're throwing at folks that are trying out for the US Cyber team.
Awesome. Good luck, everybody.
Thanks for being here, my friend. Have a great rest of your day.
You as well.
Alrighty, folks. We are into kind of the middle portion of today's virtual kickoff, and I have the pleasure of welcoming our next speaker to our event. Some of you may know, if you've been around for couple of seasons or since the beginning, Dr. Dane Brown has been an assistant head coach with the US Cyber team since the get-go, and Mr. Tom Parker comes as a referral from Dr. Brown, who I have a ton of respect for. And so it's my privilege to welcome Tom, a research scientist with Talon Defense. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to come in and talk. Definitely stepping in big shoes following that last presentation. It was really great. So by way of introduction, I'm Tom Parker. Spent 20 years active duty Navy, had a ton of different jobs, really enjoyed each and every one of them. But one of the downsides of being in the military, the more senior you get, the less hands-on you get with especially engineering. So I decided to retire at 20 years and have been a research scientist, mainly in the cyber domain for the last 3 years, and have spent a lot of time. The last 3 years have been an interesting transition from, not having LLMs and AI and moving into something where now we're in a AI-driven dev world. And I kind of want to talk about this from a fairly non-technical angle, and want to talk about being fulfilled and finding meaning in our jobs, and not simply doing it because it pays the rent, but because we actually enjoy the job. The title of the talk, if you looked at it, was "Everybody Hacks, Nobody Learns." I understand that's a little provocative, especially kind of given what we've already heard. And I obviously don't mean it literally, but I do think it's a real risk. AI is starting to make things easier. Coding, writing, security, almost every kind of knowledge work is getting easier. The barrier to entry is lower, and that's exciting. The first time I used ChatGPT, it was to write bedtime stories, which sounds a little crazy, but I let my 5-year-old come up with the prompt, and then I would read her the stories. It was super fun. We had tons of bedtime books, but like every night, the same book, night after night. She could put herself in the story. She could change the characters. We could endlessly write new ones, and we both kind of loved that back and forth interaction with the LLM. And that feeling really matters. Technology feels magical when it opens doors that used to feel closed, and it lets more people create, participate, or do something they couldn't easily do before. And that's kind of the best version of AI, I think. And it brings more people to the keyboard, gets more people in and competing in CTFs. But once the doors open, there's kind of a second question that I think maybe is more important, and it's what kind of people are we becoming while we use it? Are we learning and building judgment? Are we doing work that feels meaningful? Are we just moving faster, producing more lines of code, and feeling more burned out? And doing more isn't necessarily fulfilling. That tension shows up more clearly for me in crafts where the tools matter, but the tool is not the whole point. And I'll kind of give you a very non-cyber example. I love woodworking, and one, it's super dangerous, almost lost a finger multiple times, but you have to get the cuts just right. And I very distinctly remember measuring, putting a pencil line down, and then cutting to the wrong side of the pencil line. And that's not something that somebody will like include in a book that you read about this or on YouTube, right? Like it's something you have to learn and go do. And that learning process can be frustrating, but I got a lot of joy from it because I felt like I was getting better. I was solving problems and eventually pointed to something as like, hey, I made that. Better tools help, a better saw, a better jig. Good tools lower the barrier, but the craft still lives in the human part. The judgment, the patience, the mistakes, the pride, the people you learn with, and almost more importantly, who you taught and who taught you. And that's the lens I want to look at AI through. AI is an incredible tool. Obviously, if the top CTF teams in the country are using it, it's incredibly useful and sounds like it's a must going forward. But think of the mass-produced furniture that you've had to put together. If anybody's put together an IKEA table, I can tell you it is much, much more fun to put together a table from scratch than it is to try and build a $100 table from IKEA. And the real value you get out of that, I think, is the learning and probably not the product. So I think over time, CTFs and to the point I've heard a couple of times already, like building your own tools to help you compete in the CTF, like help you recognize patterns, because you can't build that tool until you recognize the pattern. Debug weird problems, stay patient, like admit when you're wrong, ask for help, and maybe most importantly, teach others when they're stuck, and getting stuck without quitting. And I think that's a real skill, that stick-to-itiveness that And that's actually a skill I look for in interviews. It's really hard to interview with, but like, if you can figure out if somebody has that grit during an interview, that's what I really try and find out. Anyone who spent time in CTFs knows that feeling, right? You're staring at something for hours. For me, it was always longer. And then you feel like you're getting nowhere. Then one small thing clicks and suddenly the whole challenge opens up. That click is the reward. Oh man. That click is the reward that comes with that comes from sticking with it and sticking it out and learning. At the Naval Academy, I had a Marine gunnery sergeant who was memorable for two reasons. One, his name was Gunnery Sergeant Slaughter. And two, his catchphrase was learning has occurred. And I still hear him in the back of my head when I figure something out. And for him, it didn't feel like this at the time, but in hindsight, I think it was true. Perfection wasn't the goal. Learning was the goal. And there's another part that shouldn't be overlooked. And I've heard a couple of people say it already. I'll just foot stomp it. Like CTFs are social. And part of the fun is that is the people you're with and competing together. And AI lowering that barrier to entry brings more people to the keyboard, and you have a chance to experience that click and that community together. And this becomes bigger than CTFs. The same tension shows up in software development, and I think in the workplace more broadly. We have tools that can do more work for us, but will that make your work more fulfilling, or is it just easier to produce more lines of code? And CTFs have a common goal, right? Like the goal is to get the flag, the goal is to get more points, the goal is to win. In the workplace, that goal can be much less obvious. And this is where the friction becomes between making work easy and making it meaningful. And when we talk about happiness, there are like two common ways to talk about it. One is from pleasure, things like comfort, enjoyment, ease. The others comes from meaning, purpose, personal goal, contributing to a shared goal, and personal growth. And if you don't have that in the workplace, that shared purpose and contributing to a shared goal, I think that's when the job can start to feel like a job and you're not getting as much fulfillment out of it. And those goals can't be, you can't set a low bar for yourself. I think fulfilling work stretches us, teaches us something, and usually involves other people. We help others, they help us, we get stuck, we keep going. And that doesn't always feel like fun in the moment, but that kind of happiness that you build around achieving a shared goal lasts longer. AI can remove pointless friction, which is great, helps us get to that end goal. But if it removes all the friction, it can actually remove parts of work that make us feel proud and more capable. So in the cases where AI gives us more speed, especially in software development, something like Claude Code is actually writing the code for us. We need to be really careful about what we do with that, because speed has a way of becoming pressure. In the workplace, this is what starts to worry me. Like AI gives you an initial productivity boost, and then expectations rise, and you start to do one task faster. So 5 start to feel reasonable. 1 agent helps. So why not 3 agents? Why not 5 agents? The model gives you 10 possible paths, and now you feel responsible for checking them all. Suddenly, you're managing more than learning. You're prompting, checking, reprompting, comparing, copying, pasting, second guessing. Creates a whole kind of new mental load. On one of my personal projects, I probably shouldn't admit this, but I made it so that I could manage some of my agents from my phone. And I was out with my wife messing around with my phone to keep the agents going because they had stopped waiting on me to provide input. So there was like this constant pressure that like, oh, those guys can work in the background, but you feel like there's always this push for more. And I've seen it called AI brain fry in a couple of places where the feeling of ever increasing pressure to do more faster. And it feels kind of like doom scrolling to me, where there's always one more prompt, there's always one more path, there's always one more improvement that you can do to a piece of code. And that's the trap, I think, that you feel productive, you're burning tokens, the companies that are setting up leaderboards for how many tokens were used, right? I think those can create pressure to do more and manage more agents, but I'm not sure it's actually making people feel more fulfilled. And at the end of the day, and there are a few CEOs out there that have talked about this, I'm not sure we're actually providing better features or software to the end user. And so I think that when kind of getting back to the struggle there, though, is that the kind of struggle that matters usually starts with confusion before understanding. And if the AI clears some of that confusion where you don't actually ever get to understanding, I think that's where we can end up having problems, and you feel like you're left behind. You feel like you don't understand, and that's a super uncomfortable place to be. Struggling through that problem and getting to that click makes the work more fulfilling. And I think it takes the right workplace culture where mistakes are how we teach and get better. A broken script teaches you not only what went wrong, but how to debug and fix it. And if you make the same mistake again, you will recognize it and hopefully correct it faster. If AI immediately corrects all these mistakes, you don't ever actually encounter that friction that helps you build judgment and patience and grit. And the goal isn't to eliminate all that friction. It's actually, I think, to take those mistakes as opportunities to learn. And so this is one of my favorite quotes. In 1910, Teddy Roosevelt, after he was president, gave a famous speech, and there's a section of it called "The Man in the Arena." And he said, it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who actually in the arena, whose face is marred with dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again. He goes on to say that even if the person fails, at least they fail while daring greatly, and their place will never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. And I think that last line is what matters here. I mean, you all are here because you're competitive. You're literally in the arena. And I think we just need to make sure that as we use the AI tools, that we don't remove ourselves from the arena. If the model's doing all the struggling and the model's the one getting the practice and you just get a clean answer, you never build up that confidence, that pride, or that feeling of I can do hard things. That feeling is a huge part of meaningful work and I think long-term happiness. And so the question becomes more practical. How do you use these tools without handing over the part that makes us better? And I think we've already heard, like, building the tools that the agent will use. I think that is a brilliant way to build that understanding and build that deep learning that comes with it. Because you're not taking the answer straight from the AI. You're actually teaching the AI how to do its work better. But at Talon Defense, we're trying to build a culture around two ideas. And I think the first one is like first principles, right? Like define done. Know what you want to do before you get started. And so before using AI, decide what you're trying to accomplish. And maybe it's just to get a quick answer and you just take that quick answer. Maybe it's a concept. Maybe you want to practice a skill or you want to teach someone else. And maybe you just want to write a silly story so that your 5-year-old will go to bed. Those are all different goals. And there's no right answer here, but you need to know what the done looks like. Because AI will happily keep giving you rabbits to chase, and chasing rabbits is exhausting. Having defined goal, hitting it, maybe a stretch goal is fulfilling, Like those questions that the AI always pops up at the end, like whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or whoever, it's like, oh, do you want me to go to do this next thing? It's generating that next rabbit for you to go chase. And then I think the second part is building strong interpersonal and professional relationships. You know, the CTFs were never just about the individual puzzles. They're largely a social learning environment. So don't forget the human part and pair up on problems if you can, explain your approach, teach the beginners, compare failed paths, you know, and then here at Talon, what we're trying to do is build teams of people that we enjoy spending time with and building dev teams that have strong interpersonal relationships. And I think that combined with working towards a common goal is a huge part of fulfilling work. So I said, you know, the title I had here was Everybody Hacks and Nobody Learns. And we end up with fewer people finding fulfilling jobs. And I think that's a real risk, but it's not inevitable. AI can help people get started, make difficult fields more accessible. It can remove a lot of wasted time and unnecessary friction. We want that. I think the challenge is making sure convenience doesn't replace learning. If we hand model all the struggle, we should not be surprised when people stop building judgment, confidence, and real skill. But if we use these tools thoughtfully, we can lower the barrier without losing what makes the work fulfilling. We can help people learn, contribute to a common goal, and like I did, discover the joy of solving these hard problems and actually enjoying my work in a meaningful way. So I'll stop there. I know we're a little behind. If there are any questions, I'll answer those. If not, we can.
That was fantastic. Thanks, Tom. I really appreciate your comments. And, you know, certainly encourage everyone to take to heart, you know, kind of finding that balance between pushing yourself to think critically and challenge your problem-solving skills with being able to lean on some modern technologies and another kind of set of skills. So thank you for being here today to support our kickoff. We have just a quick break before we close out with our last three speakers. So I will hand things back over to Jess, and we will be back with you in just a minute or two. Awesome. Thank you. And welcome back. At this time, we are kind of in the home stretch, closing things out. And the next gentleman that I get to introduce, I kind of stumbled across a blog that he had written just recently and reached out sort of as a little bit of a Hail Mary. Followed the work of Unit 42. I'm sure many of you know all the cool stuff that Palo is doing through this team. But it is my pleasure to introduce a senior manager of threat intel research, Justin Moore, for a talk on Get in the Game, Analyzing the World Cup as a Modern Threat Landscape. Welcome, Justin.
Hey, thanks so much. Really happy to be here. I want to make sure you can at least see my slides before our kickoff.
Cool. Let me stop the screen share and you should be able to have it. There they are. See them.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, like Brad said, I'm Justin Moore. I am a senior manager of threat intelligence at Unit 42, which is the threat research and incident response arm of Palo Alto Networks. And honestly, I am very excited to be here for Season 6 kickoff of the US Cyber Games. So before I jump in case you're wondering who I am, I took a very non-traditional career path to get here. I wasn't an engineer, I didn't code, and cyber was probably the furthest thing from what I thought I'd ever be doing. I started my career supporting Tier 1 special operations units overseas, where in the process, I decided I was going to teach myself computer and cell phone forensics. Moved over to CIA, did technical targeting, some nation-state APT defensive work, and ultimately to running clandestine operations overseas. Was incredibly fortunate to pivot to Mandiant, where I spent almost 8 years, the majority of which was on the advanced practices team, supporting incident response engagements and technical attribution of both APT and cybercrime. Built out the CTI program over at TikTok USDS, and now I'm here at Unit 42, leading fusion intelligence and rapid response. So 2 games are about to happen simultaneously. The one you know, 104 matches, 16 cities, 3 host nations, 48 countries competing, and roughly 6 million people walking through stadium gates between June 11 and July 19th. And half the planet will watch at least some of it on a screen. Now, the other game doesn't have a broadcast deal. It doesn't have a scoreboard that you can see, but it certainly has players, and they're already in position. Now, this last week, I published an analysis of what the 2026 World Cup looks like from the perspective of the people trying to attack it. And I'm here today because the US Cyber Games and that research have something important in common. And I want to show you exactly what that is. Now, here's the thing about major international sporting events. The adversary always shows up. Like Tokyo in 2020, 450 million blocked cyber attacks. Not 450,000, but 450 million, and 0 on-field disruption. Now, those 2 facts only coexist because of years of preparation. 2024 in Paris, 140 confirmed cyber events during the games, 22 successful intrusions, ransomware hits the Grand Palais venue, and roughly 40 other museum partners, and still no competition was disrupted. Now, the pattern is consistent across every mega event for the past decade. The question is never, will the adversaries try? They always try. And the question is whether the defenders are ready. Now, today, I want to walk you through what we're facing in 2026, why this year is different from every prior World Cup, and most importantly, why the skills that you're building in CTFs are exactly the skills this environment is going to demand. Now, let me put up the history so you can see the pattern. Rio in 2016, fighting URSA, which most of you probably know as Fancy Bear or APT-28, stole athlete medical records from WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency, and published them. There's reputational damage and a chilling effect on athletes participating in testing programs. Pyeongchang 2018. We're going to come back to this one in detail because it's the canonical case study. Qatar 2022. The criminal ecosystem rather than nation states. Over 16,000 fraudulent domains, 40 plus fake mobile apps, 90 fan portal accounts compromised using credential stealing malware sold on Telegram. And then Paris 24. The closest we've come to a full picture because the French cybersecurity agency published a very detailed after-action reports, 140 events, 22 intrusions, and ransomware. Now, the through line across all of these is that no event with serious, sustained preparation had its competition disrupted, and that's not a coincidence. Pyeongchang 2018 is the case study every defender should know because it told adversaries exactly what works. On the night of the opening ceremony, the Wi-Fi in the stadium went dark. The official Olympics app stopped responding, ticketing kiosks froze, broadcast drones were drowned, journalists couldn't file, and athletes' families couldn't print their tickets. 300 plus systems were compromised. It took 12 hours to restore operations, and the cause was Olympic Destroyer, a piece of wiper malware attributed to Raising Ursa, which is also known by GRU Unit 74455, the same unit behind NotPetya, but designed to look like criminal ransomware to complicate attribution and buy time. Now, here's the detail that matters for defenders. Analysis of the malware samples found that the timestamps on the files targeting the IT service provider were 5 minutes ahead of the files targeting the venue itself. The supplier went first. The supplier is always the threat surface that gets underestimated, and we very well may see that pattern again this year in 2026. Paris is the model, and Paris almost wasn't. France's National Cyber Agency started the security program 2 years before the opening ceremony. Not 6 months, but 2 years. They ran exercises against 500 games-linked facilities. They pre-positioned DDoS scrubbing capacity before the first athlete arrived, and they built a dedicated multi-agency operations center. During the games, DDoS peaked at 190,000 requests per second against the official site. That's roughly 10 times what a typical large organization ever sees in a day, compressed into sustained attack traffic. And it was absorbed. The Grand Palais ransomware attack hit, and it was contained before it spread, and no event was canceled, no athlete was affected. And that outcome was not luck. It was the result of preparation that began long before the torch was lit. And that brings me to 2026, because the threat picture this year is materially different from any prior World Cup. This is the first World Cup where the host nation is in active kinetic conflict with a state-aligned threat actor during the tournament window. On February 28th, the US-Israel-Iran conflict escalated to include direct military action, and that conflict has not yet fully ended, and it's produced a surge in Iran Nexus cyber operations against US organizations that was not present during any previous World Cup. And at the same time, the Russia-Ukraine war continues, and all three host nations, the United States, Canada, and Mexico, are NATO partners or allies. Pro-Russian hacktivist groups have repeatedly demonstrated they will key their operations to politically symbolic events. And the cybercriminal ecosystem targeting the hospitality sector has industrialized since 2023. The Muddled Libra campaign against the hospitality industry showed exactly how that attack chain works at scale. Social engineering the IT help desk, then pivoting through identity providers into virtual infrastructure. 3 threat streams running simultaneously, each one independently dangerous. Together, they create the most complex cyber environment any World Cup has faced. Now, 2 Iran Nexus actors deserve specific attention today. The Handala hack team, assessed by the FBI and multiple commercial intelligence firms to be a front operated by Iran's Ministry of Intelligence and Security. They've executed wiper attacks in early 2026, targeted the personal email accounts of senior US government officials, and doxed employees of public companies as part of influence operations. A recent CISA advisory confirms an active, ongoing campaign. This is not historical. Cyber Avengers. This is the IRGC's industrial control system arm. Their documented targeting is specifically focused on internet-exposed programmable logic controllers, or PLCs, in U.S. water, energy, and municipal infrastructure. They look for utilities that still use consumer remote access tools, things like TeamViewer or AnyDesk, that manage operational technology. And CISA and the EPA found that more than 70% of U.S. water utilities are not compliant with existing safety requirements. Now, every World Cup host city in the United States operates municipal water, wastewater, power, and transit infrastructure. And that infrastructure is inside the threat envelope of an active CISA advisory. Now, No Name 05716 is the most operationally consistent pro-Russian hacktivist group since March 2022, and they have attributed more than 3,700 targeted hosts between July of 24 and July of 25 alone. And what makes them particularly relevant for 2026 is 3 things. First, event keying. Their operations have repeatedly surged within 24 to 72 hours surrounding politically symbolic events, NATO summits, peace conferences, major sporting events. The World Cup will certainly qualify. Second, scale without sophistication. Their DDoSia toolkit runs on Windows, Linux, Android, and Docker. Volunteer participants, they get rewarded in cryptocurrency. You don't need sophisticated capability when you have distributed scale and a volunteer army. And third, OT expansion. A UK National Cybersecurity Center advisory published earlier this year specifically warns that pro-Russian hacktivists have moved beyond DDoS into targeting operational technology via exposed virtual network computing and remote access services. The same OT targeting CERN we have for Iran Nexus actors now applies here too. And despite Operation Eastwood in July of last year that produced 2 arrests and 7 arrest warrants, the group resumed operations within days. Now, financially motivated cybercrime is the highest volume, highest likelihood threat category for the 2026 World Cup. It's also the most likely to affect someone here if you or someone you know is attending. The Qatar 2022 baseline is pretty instructive. 16,000 fraudulent domains targeting fans, 40 plus fake apps in official app stores, and 90 compromised fan portal accounts using Redline and Erbium info stealers distributed through Telegram channels. Now, the Muddled Libra, also known as Scattered Spider campaign, against major hotel operators showed that the hospitality stack is a ransomware target. And the attack chain starts with a phone call to that IT help desk, a convincing voice, a credential reset, and then it's Okta, then ESXi, and then ransomware across the property management system. No phishing emails required. And then there's QR code fraud, which is the fastest growing attack vector for this specific event. 16 cities, 4 time zones, fans constantly moving between venues. And every transit corridor, parking structure, and fan zone becomes a social engineering surface. A fake shuttle QR code is trivially easy to produce and very difficult for a tired fan to verify under time pressure. Now, I'm assuming quite a few of you have done forensic challenges in CTFs before. And here's what those challenges map to in the real world. When you do OSINT to track a threat actor across aliases and infrastructure, that's exactly how we identify that Handala and its affiliated personas were operating out of overlapping C2 infrastructure, even when they presented under completely different front names. When you analyze a malicious QR code in a forensics challenge, you're building the same skill set needed to reverse engineer the fake transit QR fraud targeting fans that are moving between host cities. When you exploit that vulnerable embedded device in a pwn challenge, the underlying technique is the same as what Cyber Avengers is doing against internet-exposed PLCs in American water utilities. When you RE a wiper sample, you're doing Olympic destroyer analysis, credential harvesting, destructive payload, false flag indicators designed to complicate attribution. The CTF is not a simulation of something that might happen someday. It's a compressed version of what's happening right now. Now, the US Cyber Games talks about the concept of the cognitive athlete, the idea that cybersecurity competition develops cognitive skills, the ability to process information fast, make decisions under pressure, and adapt when the situation changes. That framing is exactly right. And here's the reason. The intelligence cycle that drives real threat analysis, it maps directly onto the CTF cycle. You collect, right? You enumerate the target, gather open source data, build your picture of what you're working with. You then process and correlate. You figure out what matters and what's noise. You analyze. You assess the threat actor's techniques, make a call on attribution, determine what they're likely going to do next. You disseminate. You write the brief that a non-technical decision maker can then act on. And finally, you act. You coordinate the response, hand off to the team that closes the gap. In a CTF, the entire life cycle might run in 4 hours. In a real incident, it may run for 4 weeks, but the cognitive structure is identical. The speed is different, the stakes are different, but the underlying skill is the same. Now, let me be direct about what's at stake here. The World Cup requires coordinated defense across 3 nations, 4 time zones, 16 cities, multiple regulatory regimes, and an independent structure that doesn't answer to any of those governments. Now, Paris succeeded because France started preparing 2 years early and built a unified operations center. The US, Canada, and Mexico, they're doing this today, and they have a matter of weeks. The defenders who can operate in that environment, multi-jurisdictional, multilingual, time compressed, technically complex, don't grow on trees. They grow in programs like this one. The people competing in Season 6 are the people who will be running World Cup scale operations in 2030 and 2034. That's not hyperbole. The pipeline from CTF competition to senior threat analyst to government partnership is real and documented. And getting in the game isn't a tagline. In cybersecurity, it's the only path to readiness. Now, I want to take 90 seconds and tell you what producing World Cup research actually looked like, because it maps directly onto what a career in threat intelligence looks like day to day. Monitoring threat actor infrastructure, the domains, the C2 servers, the Telegram channels where lures get distributed and proceeds get moved. When World Cup themed phishing lures started appearing in March, we started tracking them. Now, I love to follow geopolitical signals. The escalation of the US-Iran conflict in February absolutely changed the threat calculus for this event significantly. That's not something I learned from a database. That's pattern recognition I've built up from years of intelligence experience, tracking everything from Al-Qaeda to APTs and ransomware groups. Cross-reference government advisories, CISA, FBI, State Department, international partners with commercial threat intel and open source signals. And none of those alone gives you the full picture. The synthesis of all of that is the job. And I write for non-technical audiences. A CISO reading the assessment needs to know what to do on Monday morning. A policy official reading it needs to know what to tell Congress. The analysis is only as valuable as its ability to drive action. That job, in all its forms, starts in CTF competition. Well, let me close with the through line of everything I've just shown you. The actors of greatest concern for this year's World Cup I've mentioned today have all demonstrated their capabilities within the last 24 months in the public record against real targets with real impact. The historical record on mega events tells us exactly one thing: where preparation was serious and sustained, competition was not disrupted. Where it was weaker, adversaries succeeded, no exceptions. Now, the 2026 threat picture is more complex than any prior World Cup. It requires immense preparation, and the defenders who are going to be called on to provide that preparation in 26 and in the cycles that follow are people who built their cognitive muscles in exactly this kind of environment. So here's my ask. Treat the tournament window, June 11th through July 19th, as a live threat intelligence exercise. Watch what happens. Follow the CISA advisories. Track what the hacktivist groups announce. When an incident gets reported, ask yourself, which ring of infrastructure was it? Which threat actor class? What skill would I need to be on the team that's responding to that incident? The match is already underway. Get in the game. Back to you, Brad.
Justin, my gosh, I got some goosebumps over here. You crushed that. 10 out of 10, absolutely phenomenal. From top to bottom, just in terms of all of the reality of what's happening, on the keyboard in the game, whether it's, sitting in your shoes or, somebody that's just approaching their first CTF challenge. That's really the passion, the expertise, the dedication that you've talked about and that you've demonstrated through your talk today is truly impressive. So thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, have a great afternoon. All right, moving forward with our run of show, we have just a few speakers left. So following Justin, it is a phenomenal privilege and an honor to introduce a man I have a ton of respect for. I had the pleasure of working for and with for several years. Mr. Ken Jenkins is joining us today from the United Aero Group for a talk, Turbulence Ahead, What Keeps CISOs Up at Night. And Ken, over to you whenever you're ready. Thanks for being here.
Hey,
See your
thank you,
slides
Brad. I
here.
appreciate it. All right, just want to kick off today. My talk's gonna be a little different. I'm going to tell you what separated people who made the U.S. Cyber team from the people who didn't across the seasons of coaching. I'll dive in across some of the experiences from the 3 seasons I supported the team as a coach. If you're trying to make the season 6, this is the talk I wish I had given previously. So a little bit about myself. I'm Ken Jenkins. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at United Aero Group. I'll talk more about United Aero Group here in a second. I was also the season 2 head coach, the season 3 assistant head coach, and then a season 1, the first inaugural women's US cyber team head coach as well. So breaking my talk down today, it's going to be in 3 parts. I'm going to talk about turbulence. I'm going to talk about AI in the cockpit, and then who makes it through that. The turbulence is actually what's hitting us. AI in the cockpit, that's the things that have changed on both sides from attackers and defenders. So who makes it through this? This is what I noticed as a coach. So one thing I discovered in the military when I would be flying on different aircrafts is most of the pilots did not even flinch when they hit turbulence. So I'd be bouncing around in the cargo area or in an aircraft or helicopter, and they seem as calm as can be. So that can occur in cyber operations, cybersecurity as well. So same as in cyber right now. So the turbulence, you don't want to avoid it. You want to train for it. So right now we're going through a big transition in cybersecurity, specifically in offense and defense. So the retooling of how CTF's done, how attack and defend is done, and then how we defend corporate networks has changed as well. And there's no avoiding it, so we train for it. So a little bit about where I work. So at United Aero Group, most of the, well, before I jump to that, most of cyber talks come from someone at a 50,000 person bank or a large company in their industry. They have different views, or researchers showing off their research, releasing a tool to community, really giving back. Specific to my perspective today, I'm going to talk about we have 5 locations where I work, 3 countries, and we just achieved CMMC level 2 accreditation, which is quite monumental. One of the things about us is we sell helicopter parts. We conduct blade repairs on many aircraft, as well as component services. And then we also stock in a distributor for large OEMs, which means our parts fly on Blackhawks and Hueys. Many of the aircraft you see tied up in the Iran conflict right now, they go to places that service members ride on, or firefighters, or law enforcement. So they're relied on just like a network would be relied on to conduct business. So same compliance requirements as large organizations like Lockheed and Boeing. So we're carrying the load of very similar, very large companies, but with a fraction of the team and time. So there's 3 things. These aren't headlines. These are just things that we talk about as network defenders, CTF competitors, and even offensive operations. Nation states use the least amount of capability when they're going after targets. They look at the easy paths into some, in my case, in a helicopter prime is no longer the prime. It's a small shop making the rotor blades or components that the primes rely on. There's 3 tiered suppliers without a SOC that are soft targets. That's why something like CMMC level 2 exists. That allows us to protect ourselves as best as possible, given the size of our organization and the data we transmit, process, or store. So you follow the supply chain down until the budget gets small. That's where attackers are generally working. As you heard in the previous speaker about the World Cup, ransomware doesn't care how small you are or how large you are. They use the same automated scanners. They hit Fortune 500s. They hit smaller companies like us. So speed and fundamentals are only things keeping the lights on. So we have to leverage as many automated tools and AI as some of the larger companies do. And to be honest with you, one of the biggest takeaways, having worked at very large organizations to smaller ones, the boring stuff still wins, the blocking and tackling. Phishing, credential use, or credential reuse, misconfigured SaaS products, forgotten admin accounts, headlines, they all look exotic. It's all the same thing. Postmortems still look very embarrassing, though, as we go through and look at, well, how did this happen to us? So in my case, I deal with a lot of our sales reps and AI sales reps getting targeted with AI. This is where we're actually spending quite a bit of my time. So I'm not necessarily chasing APT groups. I mean, we do rely on a managed service provider to help us with that, not running red team ops. Two things. First is AI-powered phishing of frontline staff. My customer service reps and sales reps, they're talking to strangers all day. Their Outlook, their cell phones, their laptops are targeted in many countries around the world as they travel and meet with customers. This is their job. AI has made that very easy to send perfectly contextually relevant, personalized to the individual. That's where credentials get harvested. Yes, I know there's other controls in place that could prevent that, but the volume is up, and it's up in a bad way. So next is shadow AI. This is the new attack surface that many defenders, chief information security officers, security operations centers are dealing with. Employees pasting customer data into different AI capabilities or chatbots, maybe simple things to summarize an email thread, to upload a spreadsheet, which feeds your budget information to an LLM to get a quicker summary or a better chart or graphic. You can't exactly ban this. The productivity gains that our finance teams, our sales reps are gaining truly make a difference for them. So instead of blocking it or disabling it, you figure out a way to govern it. So AI governance now has to become table stakes. So we spend a lot of time. This isn't glamorous work. It's not the movies by any means, because you're trying to help your workforce, but at the same time, you're trying to master the problem that you're running into. And you always have a job. I know there's a lot of conversations about what's going to happen with personnel and the use of AI. My opinion is the personnel that are using AI and leveraging it are the ones that are going to be empowered in organizations. So AI in the cockpit is one of the biggest changes to the threat landscape I've seen in 20, 25 years. It cuts both ways. It's made defenders' job easier, but it's also sped up threat actors pretty tremendously. Additionally, on the attacker side, AI is rated floor for everyone, as I mentioned earlier, but phishing is almost grammatically perfect now in languages. I've dealt with several phishing campaigns this week where I truly thought someone else sent it. We had to dive pretty deep into security controls to figure out where the phishing emails actually came from. The sophistication, the aging of domains, the perfectly created TLS certs for the attack infrastructure they're coming from is pretty impressive. The recon takes, recon that took weeks now takes literally an afternoon. Also, when you're getting phone calls or you're taking phone calls, voice cloning, it's almost perfect now instead of sounding like a demo. So the barrier to credible social engineering is near zero now. So from the defender side, I use it every day. So we do, audits for compliance work. I use LLM as judge across pen test findings to make sure we effectively were able to conduct a pen test, create a great report. So if we take it back to developers, they can clean up any vulnerabilities or misconfigurations they have. And then I also use research agents that compress weeks of work into hours. And this is a necessity on the defense side just to keep up with the offense or the threat actors. This is only useful because I know when the model is accurate. AI tells me confidently many times wrong things consistently. If I didn't already know the material, I'd ship those mistakes into production. Fortunately, I'm using it as a tool, not as a replacement for certain skill sets. So again, AI has definitely raised the floor for everyone on both sides. So the market does not need more people who can prompt the model. It needs people who can catch the model when it's wrong or understands the difference between how to use a system prompt, a user prompt, or if you're using multi-agent agentic workflows, the agent charters, and how to leverage the project knowledge or efficient use of research and RAG. So the way you become that person is by learning the fundamentals the hard way. And through the 3 seasons I've coached with the US cyber team, CTFs are perfect for that. You're allowed to fail fast here. Oftentimes AI can't solve the challenge for you completely. It can help, but you have to actually understand what you're trying to solve. John Hammond recently showed off a solution where ChatGPT Codex was able to complete, entry to medium level challenges during CTFs. It's pretty phenomenal. Check it out. But I'll tell you, the things you're going to face this year at the US Open, US Cyber Open, and then in any of the competitions, you will not be able to completely solve those with AI. They will require critical thinking. They'll require leveraging a team around you. I do recommend you check out his talk. So who flies through the turbulence in 3 seasons of coaching? Here's what I noticed that actually separates some of the competitors compared to the people who made the team. So a couple takeaways. The athletes who went the furthest weren't the ones who scored the most flag at any single event. They were the ones, after losing very badly, went home that night and figured out exactly what they missed. They were the hobbyists. They were the ones that could not put down a challenge, and they wanted to see it through no matter what. You can teach skills. I cannot teach this. This is perseverance. This is grit. This is trying harder, as we've all heard the moniker before. In a real incident, it's the difference between containing it and watching it spread. If you have it, protect it. If you don't, build it now. So you're going to spend a lot of time during this week in the Open struggling. Try harder, keep persevering, and learn from some of your mistakes. It will be a rewarding week going through the Open. So some of the specialists beat generalists. This is something I've seen a few people every year, a few of the athletes on the team. The ones who made the team are elite at one category and competent across the rest. So pick your thing. What is it? Is it reverse engineering malware? Is it understanding Linux security? Is it Windows enterprise security? Is it forensics? Is it attack and defend? Get scary good at your craft and be good at a few others. Those will be the keys, just like in some of the things I have to do at work. There's things we can get away with generalists, but for deeper level of work, we have to pick something and be good at. One of the things you'll do for the team is you'll make the overall team better by having depth in your particular category. So this is the same. This is no different than in an industry. The senior people I trust most are deep in one area and dangerous in three or more areas. All right, communications and team play. The person who can explain what they're seeing fast and clearly is worth 2 silent geniuses. So I bring this up because every year we have excellent candidates on the team, athletes that are competing, but we need to be able to communicate effectively and leverage everyone's genius. Same on answer and response call. If you get at 3 o'clock in the morning, you need the person who understands the enterprise. That's more of your generalist. you need a person that can pull the memory off an endpoint or use the EDR to discover what happened. You need somebody that can look at a mail gateway. You need someone to communicate that to leadership or whoever the incident commander may be for that breach. You need to talk through your work out loud, speak amongst each other, be confident. Do understand, I know a lot of imposter syndrome sits in CTFs and attack and defense. It's okay. This is a place where you can fail. So talk through your work out loud, same as we would at United Aero Group when we have a breach. Stream yourself. Write up what you solve. It feels awkward at first until it doesn't. You're going to get to the point where you're writing up every single CTF challenge. And also you're communicating with the team and in attack and defense. The only way you do that effectively and compete at a high level is to talk out loud. So training, not gaming. You got to show up when you don't feel like it. You got to review when you lose. You got to study what the top players did and stole from it, what they stole from the competition. There's going to be times where you're going to get stuck on challenges. You got to figure out ways to get through that. There's going to be people on the team that compete in a lot of CTFs, but never get systematically better. The way you get systematically better is to keep trying, honing your craft, and really focusing on those challenges. Again, reps without reflection. One thing we did in the military every time we had a major operation is we conducted an after actions review. So we reflected on what our performance was like, what went well, what didn't go so well, and then we spent time improving that. So that's one thing I loved about when I was a coach of different seasons. Whereas every time we competed, there was some post-mortem or some after-action review we did to enhance the team. So again, reps without reflection is just time wasted. All right, I talked a little bit about this already, but I want to kind of circle back on it. Pick your weak category. Inevitably, someone that's good at that category will get stuck. You will be able to provide some context and help them, or maybe just move them along in that challenge. Do nothing else for a couple weeks, but hone a weaker category. Again, generalists are fine on the teams, but we still need expertise, but everyone should have a general baseline. One thing I saw from all 3 seasons was study with someone who's better than you. Ask the hard questions, ask the silly questions, find comfort, watch streams, read write-ups, try to predict the next move, especially in attack and defend. That's a very dynamic environment. It's highly stressful. There's lots of anxiety. There's exploits flying. There's tools being reverse engineered, and you're throwing them back at other teams. This is a great place to really sweat and exercise and get better. Next, keep a notebook. I mean, I know everyone's using Notion, Obsidian, OneNote, but keep a notebook of everything you've been doing, every box, every challenge, what tried, what worked, what didn't work so well. Learn from your mistakes. Don't just leave a CTF or get stuck on a few challenges and it's just forget about it after the event. Some of the things I see the best competitors or athletes on the team is they build something real. They build something like, a GitHub project, or they go after a couple certs. One of the great things, if you make the cyber team, generally there is some training associated with it and some certs. So I highly recommend you look into that. Next is talk to people. Discord, meetups with the team, which will be plentiful. And remember, no one got good at CTFs on their own, especially not attack and defense. So last thing is I'll say 2 years of CTFs walked in with 2 months of CTFs. So that's 2 people, right? 2 people or 2 people walking in, one with 2 years of CTFs, another with 2 months. By the end of most of these seasons that I was the coach, you could hardly tell the difference. Once the team started gelling and started coming up with similar work ethics and started doing similar research and learning from each other, that was a gap, pretty tremendous gap, 2 years. And it closed faster than I think anyone on the staff expected from the coaching team. So whatever bracket you land in this season, take it seriously. We've been progressing quite a bit across the US Cyber team. Every year the team's doing better. We're closing the gap on competition, or we're right there neck and neck, as you saw this year, taking second place at the ICC. Take this seriously. The skills you build here will pay off for the rest of your career. Good luck. Thank you.
And excellent stuff. Such great advice across the board. I think you had one of my favorite quotes of the day. That was pick your thing, get scary good at it, then fill in around it. I think that is just phenomenal piece of kind of knowledge for folks to take into the competitions this coming week. And really appreciate all the contributions you've made to the program over the past couple of seasons, and how much of an impact you've made on so many of the athletes that have come through the US Cyber Games. So thank you for being here with us this afternoon. It's always a pleasure to see you. Excellent talk. I really think that's some great perspective that'll help folks really excel over the next week and a half throughout the US Cyber Open.
Thanks, Brad.
All righty, and with that, I now have the pleasure of introducing our closing keynote. This gentleman comes to us through one of our partners and sponsors, SANS. Known him from a past life as well, when he was doing some other really cool work. But to close us out this afternoon, we have Mr. Chris Cochran, the Field CISO and VP of AI Security with the SANS Institute, for a talk titled Beyond the Prompt, AI as Your Mastery Multiplier in Cyber, Career, and Life. Chris, welcome. Thanks for being here. Whenever you're ready.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I got to be honest with everybody, right? I wish I could tell you that all throughout my entire life, I was a great student, I was a great athlete, I was a great citizen of the world. But to be quite honest with you, I've been a terrible student pretty much my entire life. And you would think, oh, wow, don't you work for SANS, an education body? You should be a great student. I wish I could say that. But I'll tell you this, whenever AI became as prominent as it is today, I have learned more in the last 3 years than I've probably learned in my entire life. And I was up late one night, working through some problems on the AI security side. And I was sort of ruminating on how fast things are moving and changing and how much I've changed as a person as a result. And I, was having a conversation with AI and I said, hey, what is the difference between someone who uses AI versus someone who doesn't use AI in their day-to-day life? Like, take the same exact person, the same exact experiences, the same mindset, but give one person AI and the other one doesn't. What does that difference look like? And it told me something that would change my life, really. It would change the way I look at AI. It changed the way I communicated the benefits of AI to people. It said, I want you to imagine that you're a chess grandmaster, and every single game, for one move, you get to use Stockfish or Alpha Zero, right? The models that pretty much can beat any grandmaster of any time ever. Imagine if you could use that as a tool for one match. How would that change a match? How would that change an entire tournament? How would that change an entire career in chess? And it was just so clear to me that leveraging artificial intelligence, especially if you use it in a very strategic and intentional way, can change your career. It can change your life. It can change the way you communicate with people. It can change the way you problem solve. You would think that, the way I'm talking about AI right now, right? All of the great benefits that it gives you, you would think that folks in cybersecurity would be, open arms to artificial intelligence, right? We're technologists at the end of the day. But I have to be transparent with you. I've probably had conversations with between 300 or 400 leaders around the world over the last 6 to 9 months. And I would have to say that 50% of those folks are self-professed AI skeptics. I was just at a dinner I bring folks together for dinner quite often, and I would say it was probably about 20 or so folks. And we have conversations around artificial intelligence. We have conversations around strategy and leadership and cybersecurity. And as we were going around the table, I was asking people their feelings about artificial intelligence, and about half of them were self-professed AI skeptics. And I said, hey, look, everybody, from here forward, you can no longer afford to be an AI skeptic, right? The adversary is using AI. If you think that you could just come in and, not use this technology and think that you're going to be able to keep pace with an adversary that's using this to the best of their ability, because they see their goal at the other end of this tunnel. So they're going to use as much capabilities, they're going to use as many avenues to take our data, take our money in order to get that. I said, you can no longer afford to be an AI skeptic. At worst case, you can be cautiously optimistic. But we have to understand this technology. This technology is waiting for no one. It doesn't care if you believe in it or not. This is a technology that's going to change the world. I'm a student of technology. I'm a student of business. I used to be super envious of the folks that were a part of the Industrial Revolution, right? I'm like, wow, look at that innovation. Look at how things were changing and shifting so fast. And a lot of people were able to make an impact in society. And then I thought about the dot-com era. Like, wow, what if I was operating around that time, right? All these websites, all these titans are coming up with all this incredible and intelligent and creative solutions. And then AI happened. AI really came to the forefront. And this is my opinion. I have a lot of research, I have a lot of experience that would back this up. But I personally believe that this AI revolution is bigger and more impactful to the human society, the human condition as it stands today is more impactful than the Industrial Revolution and more impactful than the dot-com era. And so we're going to talk about how do we use artificial intelligence to get better. I used to have a podcast. It's still running to this day. I used to co-host it with a buddy of mine called Hacker Valley Studio. And it was all about the human performance element of cybersecurity. And so we would bring on folks from all sorts of walks of life, chess grandmasters and professional athletes, MMA fighters, you name it. And we would take all those skills and we would take all those concepts and we would bring it into cybersecurity. I would say that one of the best things that you can do is really understand how do you learn as a person. Because just like I said in the very beginning, I wasn't the best traditional student. I'm more of a, hey, give me a goal and I'm going to figure out how to get there. Right? Tim Ferriss has a book called Tribe of Mentors. And in that book, he has this concept called a mini MBA, which is he architects his own learning path, right? He pulls from courses, he pulls from videos, he pulls from different things like blogs and even tweets if you want to. And he pulls all that stuff together to teach himself. And I learn better in that context. So once you understand how you learn, you can actually leverage artificial intelligence to iteratively improve in whatever field you're trying to get better in. You can personalize this upskilling because if you think about it, I wish we could just say, hey, everybody learns the same. We know that's not the case. If you look at any educational study, you know that people learn differently. Some people are more kinetic, right? They need to move, they need to do stuff. Some folks are visual. Some folks are auditory listeners. But once you understand how you learn, then you can start to architect your own personal training and development in a way that best suits you. And so by understanding the way I learn, by understanding that, hey, I'm an iteratively, I have to be tactile, I have to do something, right? I have to be an active learner. I can't learn passively. I wish I could. I wish I could say I had a photographic memory and I remember everything and boom, that's it, easy. But I'm not like that. I have to actually do stuff. So I have to do things like projects. I've been able to do projects that I would have never even dreamed of because I'm able to use artificial intelligence to walk me through certain aspects of technologies, certain aspects of different solutions that I might not have been able to do before, right? I used to really rely on other people, and sometimes you don't get access to other people as much as you'd like, right? I still prefer people, but in a pinch, artificial intelligence is always there to help support. One of the biggest things that I get a question about is, hey, but what about skill atrophy, right? If you over rely on artificial intelligence, don't you lose skills? And in some cases, you're absolutely right. My daughter, she was doing one of her final papers for school. She just graduated high school, super proud dad. But she gave me a paper and said, "Hey, Dad, I just finished this paper. I want you to read through it and let me know what you think." I read through this paper and I was like, "Girl, you don't know any of these words. There's no way. This is not you speaking. This is not your vocabulary." Now, if you were to just continue to write your papers like this, your ability to write papers would not improve, right? We all know that. So, how do you figure out exactly what skills might be atrophying? So let's say you use a particular model of choice. It could be Gemini, it could be Claude, it could be any of them. If you interact with one more regularly, ask that model, hey, out of all these conversations, all these transactions we've had with one another, I want you to look through our history and I want you to understand what skills I might be atrophying over time. And then are there skills that I might be improving? So one of the things that I realize is that once I started using AI, my initial idea generation I might have gone there first. And so I was like, hey, you used to come up with your own ideas, but now I see that you're relying on me to come up with initial ideas. And so I said, okay, yep, gotta Roger that. I understand. Good friend of mine is Ken, who's just speaking, and he's one of those folks that is an outstanding student. I mean, he has more SANS certifications than I could count. And but again, I operate in a very different manner. Another thing you can do is red teaming a scenario, right? Because we would love to just say, hey, we have all the answers. This is the right way to do things, even if we have certain ideas or expectations for how a particular project's going to unfold. But if you use artificial intelligence and you take away the pedantic, nomenclature that it tends to have, you say, hey, I want you to be extremely honest with me. I don't want you to sugarcoat things. I want you to tell me how things could be better or what could go wrong in a given scenario. By having a secondary look at what you have going on, by looking at having this extra set of eyes to be able to look at the stuff that you're doing, it's going to help you guide in a right direction. Now, is AI always going to be correct? Absolutely not. You almost have to think about it from this context. One of the big things I used to do is I used to write screenplays just for fun because I used to do content and things like that. And I heard someone give a piece of advice, and I thought it was brilliant. A lot of times when screenwriters write anything, they'll give it to somebody, even somebody that isn't in the business. And what they'll do is they'll say, hey, I want you to take a look at this and read it and tell me what you think. And so they'll read it and they're like, hey, I really didn't understand the relationship between the main character and this person. And this is what you should do. You should do it like this, that, or the other. What they said is you should always listen to that first part, right? The first part is like, hey, there's a problem, there's a disconnect, but how to fix that problem might not be the way that person presented it. You might want to say, okay, there might be a problem here. So I need to understand what is it that I need to do in order to fix it. So you don't necessarily offload all of your development, all of your corrections outwardly to another person or to artificial intelligence. You can create different scenarios. One of the things we used to do, so I used to work at Netflix. I led the threat intelligence team there and was an incident commander. What we would do is every Friday, if there was no active incident going on, we would spin this thing called the wheel of misfortune, and it would have different incidents. And when you spun the wheel, it would land on one, and then you would mentally work your way through how you would go about solving that particular incident. And so by putting yourself in different scenarios, different avenues of operating, different constraints, right? Because constraints actually breed creativity. You're able to work muscles that you might not have been able to do otherwise. Another one of the most important things that I do is this concept called the table of mentors. And now this is a classic executive coaching uh, exercise, and it was still phenomenal back then because I was learning to be an executive coach a while ago. And so what you would do is you would take a person, they're a client, they're trying to work through a particular problem, and you would tell them to come up with three people that they would want to talk to about this problem, right? Let's say you were dealing with astrophysics. And so at your table, you had Michio Kaku, you had Neil deGrasse Tyson, and Brian Greene, right? And you're having a conversation, and you start to think about how they would answer some of the questions that you might have. And of course, there's going to be a little give and take there of like, would they actually say that? But it just puts you in the mindset of that you have the answers, you just have to work through the problem. But now with artificial intelligence, you can take that even a step further. You can now say, hey, I want to pull up a project and I want these personas to be at this table. And I want you to pull real information, real quotes. I want you to pull, basically replicate their mentality into this project. And then you can literally sit there and have a conversation with three of the best folks in whatever you're trying to endeavor on. That is such a powerful tool. Like I can't offer that enough for folks to start to try. One of the other big things that I've gotten a lot better at because of artificial intelligence is communication, right? Ken was just talking about communication and how important communication is, especially when you're playing a game, when you're working, during an incident, when you're trying to get things like money for projects at work or personnel or trying to get a project off the ground. Or hey, even if you're trying to build a company and you're talking to VCs and you're fundraising, learning to communicate, learning to be a storyteller is such an important thing. But in order to get to that point, in order to get to the point where you're either teaching someone or trying to communicate or persuade them, you have to understand it yourself. So let's say there's something that's extremely complicated. I'm a big astronomy nerd. I love that stuff. Again, terrible student, so I was terrible at math, so you'll never see me as a theoretical physicist, but I love the concepts behind it. And I wanted to learn about black holes, and I wanted to understand what are the mechanisms that we know about black holes? Like what is the reality? What are all of these folks talking about? Because some of this stuff gets really complicated, it gets really complex. And so by having AI teach it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, right? One of the biggest things that we have in our in really AI and cybersecurity is that we have this thing called imposter syndrome, where we feel like, oh, I feel like I should know that. So I don't want to ask that question because I don't want to look like less than. First of all, if you're in a room like that, you're probably in the wrong room, right? Because we need to be in learning environments. We need to, feel free to be able to ask questions because other people have those questions. But let's say in this given scenario, we don't want to ask a question. We want to learn from artificial intelligence so we can have it explain it to us, and then we can start to understand it, and then we can take that information and convey that to somebody else. In order to really convey information in the best possible way is taking data, because you have the bits, the bytes, the stuff that we understand as technologists, with emotion. And that's where the storytelling comes from. One of the things I used to do a while back is I used to write blogs for lawyers to teach them about different cybersecurity concepts. And I remember they said, hey, we want to learn about ransomware. And so I wrote this whole blog as a narrative. I said, I want you to imagine that you get home from work at the end of the week and you get to your door, you put your key in the door, and it doesn't turn. And then not only that, you see a note that's on your door and it says, hey, if you don't send 20 Bitcoin to this address, you're never going to get access to your house. That's ransomware. And you could see how, even though it could be a kitschy example, right? It's a kitschy story, but you can feel how that person would feel, right? You can imagine yourself at your door putting in your key and it not turning. You can imagine reading that note. So by being able to put folks in a scenario that they can empathize with, that they understand, and be able to communicate in a vocabulary, a taxonomy that they understand, we then are able to mind meld and you're able to get your points across. One more thing before I'm sure everybody's had a long day. One of the biggest things that I've learned about in all of performance is this concept of flow state. And so there's so many incredible books out there about flow state. One of the biggest things, and I'll give you a couple books here in a second. One of the biggest things about flow state is the fact that you have to intentionally sometimes put yourself in that situation, right? You have to almost architect your world in a way that would enable you to get to a flow state, right? If you're doing a lot of start and stops and you're being distracted, you'll never quite get there. And I was fascinated with flow state. So I really went deep and I read all these books. And one of them was called The Rise of Superman. And it was about these extreme sports athletes, right? So that's what we are, right? We've been talking about how we're athletes in this cyber game. What it was teaching is that these extreme athletes, right? These are the folks that are doing BMX. These are the folks that are doing the big wave surfing, not your classic sports where you're playing football or you're playing basketball, but these are extreme sports. And it talked about how they have exponentially improved their field. They've exponentially improved their own performance. And they were trying to figure out exactly why they're able to improve much better than a classic sport. And it has to do with intention. It has to do with a little bit of fear, right? Because if you are in a state where you could get hurt or you could even die, your focus tends to be that much more intense. And I remember reading through this book, and I'm like, all right, Stephen Kotler, that's the author for the book. I was like, all right, this is great, but what is this? How can I use this in cybersecurity? And I got to the end of the book, and what he said is that even though you might be in an office, you might be doing white collar work, you might be a lawyer, you might be a cybersecurity practitioner, you might be in artificial intelligence. In order to get a similar feeling as those extreme athletes, you have to play. You just have to play. So when we were talking about that wheel of misfortune, we were talking about things like the US Cyber Open, right? Being able to play, doing things like tabletop exercises, putting yourself in different scenarios, doing different CTFs. You're enabling yourself to get that focus, right? Because it's fun, it's exciting, but you're actually using real muscles that you're going to be able to use in your job. And I'll end on this because it's a little bit of a cautionary tale. I honestly believe that we are in a bit of a calm before the storm because I do see a world in which there might be a lot of autonomous malicious agents operating that are going to make it really tough for cybersecurity practitioners out there in the world. And so I've spent a lot of my time developing things that are going to help leaders, that are going to help practitioners in that inevitability. I think now's the time for us to prepare. Now's the time for us to get ready, for us to train. And it doesn't have to be all doom and gloom. It can actually be really fun. And if you make it that way, it's all in what you put into it. But if we prepare right now, if we really get intentional and we really want to take our skills to the next level, if we want to take the things like the Cyber Open seriously, we want to take our CTF seriously, we want to take our development at work seriously, we band together as individuals, we share tips, tricks, and we communicate, hey, where we're stuck, where do we see something, what did you figure out, what did you learn, share it with everybody else. But I think if we all do that, if we're really intentional about our development as athletes, as these cyber athletes, because if you really think about it, we are mental athletes, just like a chess grandmaster. with no off season. And we're not going to get a lot of breaks if we start to have these different agents come online that are going to try to look for these targets of opportunity. It's going to get tough, but we have each other. We have the ability to learn, grow, and develop. And I think that's all we need to really focus on. And yeah, I hope you all have a great game. And I thank everybody for giving me the time to come and chat with you.
Fantastic stuff, Chris. I really appreciate your expertise and just the perspective that you offer. I think, there's so much to consider as things evolve so quickly and so many new headlines about this and that emerging and threats and cool opportunities that come with it. And really just kind of finding that balance and using it to your advantage in that way is phenomenal stuff. So thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Have a wonderful rest of your day. Okie doke, folks. We will close things out with just a few last announcements. That is a wrap on our featured speaker lineup for the Season 6 US Cyber Open kickoff celebration. We really hope you enjoyed the materials that they brought, the expertise that they shared, the perspectives that they gave, and all of the encouragement that was offered to either continue diving in or to dip your toes in the water. Coming at you next week, we do have Cyber Rush Week. So if you're signed up for today's event or either of the CTFs, you'll also receive invites to our Cyber Rush Week events. Those will start on Monday and run through Thursday. Monday is From Hacking to Hiring, US Cyber Games Talent Night. Tuesday, we have a panel, What Blue Teams Wish Red Teams Understood and Vice Versa. Wednesday, another panel, Life as a US Cyber Games, US Cyber Team athlete. And then we'll close things out with a AI Hacking Lab hands-on AI red teaming event on Thursday. That is going to be led by Cameron Bettridge. A few more announcements and reminders. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, we will open up our Beginners Game Room CTF. That opens up at 3 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, June 5th. And then on Monday, we will open up the competitive CTF. That is Monday, June 8th at noon Eastern time. That will feature the Around the World category with all the challenges contributed by our international partners and colleagues. Of course, the AI policy has been talked about a little bit today. I know some of you have had questions. Hopefully those have gotten answered in the appropriate channels in Discord. But the AI policy is embedded into the rules of engagement. So take a look at that if you haven't already. And if you do have questions on that, feel free to reach out to us via the Get Help function. And last but not least, to close things out, we could not do what we do without our phenomenal partners and sponsors. You heard from a couple of them today, so thank you, Chris, for closing us out from SANS. Thank you to our opening keynote from the NIST Information Technology Lab, Mr. Jim St. Pierre. All of our speakers that joined us this afternoon, phenomenal job, and to our partners, CISA, Battelle, and MasterCard, really appreciate all of the work that you do to help us do what we do and for believing in our mission and vision. With that, we will call it a wrap on the Season 6 US Cyber Open kickoff. We hope to see many of you in Discord. If you haven't joined us already, join the conversations there. And we will be sharing out more information tomorrow, about 3 hours before the Beginners Game Room opens. There will be another email going out reminding you of how to access the platform, create an account, all of that kind of stuff. But of course, we are available if you have any questions navigating next steps with this series of events. Thank you all for joining us. Thanks again to our speakers. Thanks to our partners and sponsors. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Thursday, and we'll see you around Discord.